The city never truly sleeps. It only rests its eyes for a moment. Below, the streets are rivers of light, headlights, and taillights, flowing in a silent, endless stream. But in a room high above this restless world, there is a different kind of light. It is the cool, blue glow of a screen, painting a face in the darkness. On this screen, another river flows, an endless scroll of updates, opinions, and curated moments of joy from people you may never meet. There is the phantom vibration of another notification, another email, another demand on your attention. You are more connected than any human being has ever been in history, yet a profound sense of isolation permeates the air. You are not searching for more information. You are not looking for more entertainment. You are searching for an off switch. You are searching for silence. This feeling, this low-grade hum of anxiety, this quiet desperation that persists even when things are objectively good, is the fever of our age. It is a deep and subtle dissatisfaction, a sense that no matter how much you achieve, how much you acquire, or how much you connect, something is fundamentally missing. We are told that this is a personal failure, a chemical imbalance, a lack of gratitude, or a failure to optimize our lives correctly. We try to solve it with more productivity, more possessions, more experiences, more self-improvement. But this only seems to widen the inner void. This feeling has a name, an ancient one. It is called Dukkha. It is not just overt pain or tragedy, but the pervasive friction of a life lived in resistance to its own nature, the stress of constant wanting, and the ache of an unquiet mind. Recognizing this is not an act of pessimism, it is an act of profound clarity and courage. It is the first step toward healing. Thousands of years ago, a man sat under a tree, and he was not a god, but a human being who chose to look directly at this same fundamental question of human unease. His journey was not an escape from the world, but a journey deeper into its very heart, into the workings of his own mind. The wisdom he discovered is not a dogma to be believed, but a set of tools to be used, a practical science of the mind that offers a path. This is an invitation, not to a new religion, but to an ancient exploration, an invitation to gently turn your attention inward, away from the noise, and to begin the journey of rediscovering the profound and unshakable peace that is not something you must build, but something you must simply uncover. It is already here, waiting patiently beneath the turbulence of your thoughts, like a calm, silent seabed beneath the stormiest of waves. And the path to it begins now, with a single, simple breath. We begin our journey, not with a promise of immediate bliss, but with an act of profound honesty. We begin by looking directly at the universal condition of the human heart. In the ancient language of this path, the word for this condition is dukkha. When translated into English, it is often given the stark and heavy label of suffering. And for many of us, this word can be a barrier. It sounds dramatic, pessimistic, perhaps even self-indulgent. We think of suffering as great tragedy, immense physical pain, or deep, soul-crushing despair. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far broader, far more subtle, and far more intimately woven into the fabric of our daily lives. Perhaps a better set of words would be unsatisfactoriness, unease, friction, or a pervasive sense of being incomplete. It is the low-grade, persistent hum of anxiety that you feel when you are stuck in traffic. It is the quiet sting of disappointment when a pleasant evening comes to an end. It is the vague restlessness that haunts you on a Sunday afternoon, even when all your chores are done. To speak of dukkha is not to adopt a negative worldview. It is the opposite. It is the act of a doctor who, with great compassion, makes an accurate diagnosis of an illness. Without a clear and honest diagnosis, there can be no hope for a cure. To acknowledge dukkha is the most courageous and optimistic step we can take, for it is the first step on the path to freedom from it. The tradition speaks of dukkha in three distinct yet interwoven layers. The first is the most obvious, the one we all recognize instantly. It is called dukkha, which can be translated as the suffering of suffering or the pain of pain. This is the raw, undeniable hardship of existence. It is the physical pain of a migraine headache, of a chronic illness, of an aging body that no longer moves as it once did. It is the sharp, emotional pain of grief when we lose someone we love. It is the sting of betrayal, the ache of loneliness, the fear that arises when we receive bad news. This form of dukkha needs little explanation. It is a universal truth of life as a biological creature on this earth. Our bodies are fragile, our hearts are tender, and the world is full of circumstances beyond our control. No amount of wealth, power, or positive thinking can build a wall high enough to keep this fundamental pain out forever. To deny this reality is to live in a fantasy. To acknowledge it is to stand on common ground with every other human being who has ever lived. It is the shared wound that, when met with wisdom, can become a source of profound empathy. The second layer of dukkha is more subtle and perhaps more pervasive in our modern, affluent world. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the pain that arises from the fact that pleasant experiences do not last. Everything is impermanent, and our happiness, when it is dependent on external conditions, is therefore inherently unstable. Think of the most perfect vacation you have ever taken. Even in the midst of your joy, was there not a small, quiet voice in the back of your mind, aware that this would have to end? The last day of the trip is always tinged with the sadness of returning to routine. Think of the pleasure of a new car. That pleasure is pure until the first scratch appears, or until the novelty wears off, and it simply becomes a mode of transportation. This is the dukkha of the fading high. It is the engine that drives consumer culture. We buy something, feel a temporary sense of satisfaction, and then that feeling inevitably fades, leaving behind a void that we feel compelled to fill with the next purchase. We cling to youth, but our face and body inevitably change. We cling to a moment of success, but life moves on and new challenges arise. The suffering here does not come from the things themselves. A beautiful sunset is not painful. A loving relationship is not painful. The pain comes from our clinging, our desperate attempt to freeze the moment, to hold on to the pleasant feeling and make it permanent in a universe that is defined by constant flow. It is like trying to build a dam out of sand. The river of time will always wash it away, and the struggle to prevent this is the very source of our exhaustion and disappointment. The third and deepest layer is called sankhara dukkha. This is the most subtle and profound form of suffering, the background radiation of unease that arises from the very nature of having a conditioned existence. What does this mean? It means that you, as a person, are not a solid, unchanging thing, but a complex, ever-changing process. Your body is a process of cells being born and dying. Your mind is a ceaseless flow of thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and memories. There is no fixed, stable, chief executive officer sitting in a control room inside your head. The sense of me that feels so solid and real is, in fact, a temporary assembly, a collection of constantly shifting physical and mental components. This inherent instability, this lack of a solid core, creates a fundamental ground-level anxiety. It's the constant, low-level effort required to hold it all together, to maintain a consistent identity, to defend a self that is ultimately an illusion. This is the dukkha that fuels our social anxieties. It is the pressure to present a curated version of ourselves on social media, to build a personal brand, to have a life that looks successful and coherent from the outside. It is the friction of being a somebody. It is the deep existential unease that we try to numb with distraction, with noise, with constant business. It is the stress not of having problems, but the stress of simply being a self that we feel we must protect and promote at all costs. This is the foundational unsatisfactoriness that underpins all other forms of suffering. There is a powerful story that illustrates this journey from personal pain to universal understanding. A young woman named Kisa Gotami lived in the time of the Buddha. Her first and only child, a young boy, fell ill and died. Consumed by an unbearable grief, she refused to accept his death. She picked up his small body and wandered from house to house, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man told her that she should go to the Buddha, for he was the great physician and might have the medicine she sought. She ran to the Buddha and laid her child at his feet, pleading for help. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "There is only one thing you must do to find this medicine. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed from a home where no one has ever died." Kisa Gotami's heart filled with hope. A mustard seed was such a simple thing to find. She went to the first house and knocked. "The Buddha has sent me to fetch a mustard seed for medicine," she said. "Can you spare one?" The woman of the house was happy to help. But when Kisa Gotami added, "But it must be from a house where no one, not a parent, a child, a spouse, or a servant thus ever died," the woman's face fell. "O lady," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. We lost a parent just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family had a story of loss. Every heart bore the scar of grief. As the day wore on and the sun began to set, the truth slowly dawned on her. Her sorrow, which had felt so singular and isolating, was in fact the shared sorrow of all humanity. She was not alone in her pain. In that moment, her frantic, grasping grief softened into a deep, quiet understanding. She went to the forest, laid her child to rest, and returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with a heart that had begun to awaken. Her story is our story. We all carry our own private sorrows, our own secret fears, our own unique disappointments, and we often feel isolated by them, as if we are the only ones struggling. But the wisdom of dukkha teaches us that this is not true. Our pain is the thread that connects us to everyone. Acknowledging this is not morbid. It is the beginning of true compassion. It is the realization that we are all in this together. And so, we stand here at the beginning of our path, having looked honestly at the diagnosis. We have seen the obvious pain of hardship, the subtle pain of change, and the deep underlying friction of existence itself. This clarity is not a cause for despair. It is a cause for hope. For any good doctor, once a diagnosis is clearly understood, the next, most natural question to arise is this: what is the cause of this illness? What is the source of this universal river of dissatisfaction? And it is to that question, the very root of our dis-ease, that we will turn our attention next. Having diagnosed the universal condition of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of our lives, we arrive at the physician's next crucial step. The Buddha, in his role as the great spiritual doctor, does not leave us with only a diagnosis. He points with unerring precision to the root cause of the ailment. If dukkha is the fever, then what is the infection that gives rise to it? The answer is a single, powerful concept, captured in the ancient word tanha. This word is most often translated as craving, but its deeper meaning is better conveyed by the word thirst. It is not a casual want or a simple preference. Tanha is a deep, primal, and relentless thirst of the heart. It is the feeling of being fundamentally parched, a sense of inner lack that constantly drives us to seek satisfaction from things outside of ourselves. This thirst is the engine of our restlessness. It is the unseen force that propels us through our days, chasing one thing, running from another, never able to find a place of true, abiding rest. Understanding this thirst, seeing it clearly in the laboratory of our own experience, is the key to unlocking the entire puzzle of our discontent. This thirst is not a simple, monolithic force. It manifests in our lives in three distinct ways. The first and most recognizable form is what is called kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the endless desire for experiences that are pleasing to our five senses and our mind. It is the craving for the taste of delicious food, the sight of a beautiful sunset or an attractive person, the sound of captivating music, the feeling of a comfortable chair or a warm embrace. It also includes the thirst for pleasant thoughts and ideas, the endless scrolling through social media feeds for the next interesting article, the next amusing video, the next hit of validation from a like or a positive comment. In our modern world, this form of thirst is amplified 1,000-fold. An entire global economy is built upon stimulating and then promising to satisfy our kamatana. The problem, the wisdom teachings tell us, is not in the pleasures themselves. A delicious meal is not inherently bad. Music is not the enemy. The problem lies in the thirst, the dependency, the mistaken belief that these fleeting sensory experiences can provide us with lasting happiness. They cannot. They are like flashes of lightning in a dark sky. They illuminate for a moment, but then leave the darkness even deeper than before. The more we chase these pleasures, the more our happiness becomes conditional, fragile, and utterly dependent on the next external stimulus. The second form of thirst is more subtle and deeply connected to our ego, our sense of self. It is called bhavatanha, the thirst for becoming, or the thirst for existence. This is the deep-seated drive to be more, to be better, to be somebody of significance. It is the craving that fuels our ambition. It is the desire to get the next promotion, to achieve a certain status, to be seen by others as successful, intelligent, attractive, or even as spiritual and enlightened. It is the compulsion to build a legacy, to create a life story that feels solid and meaningful, to carve our name into the world so that we feel we truly exist. This thirst for becoming is what gets us out of bed in the morning, but it is also the source of our deepest anxieties. It is the fuel for the fire of comparison, the constant measuring of our own lives against the curated lives of others. It gives rise to jealousy when others succeed, and to despair when we feel we have failed. This thirst whispers to us that we are not enough as we are, that our worth is conditional upon our next achievement. It is a race with no finish line, for as soon as one goal is reached, the thirst for becoming immediately projects a new, higher goal onto the horizon, ensuring that we are never allowed to simply be at peace with where and who we are in this moment. The third form of thirst is the shadow of the second. It is vibhavatana, the thirst for non-existence, or the thirst for annihilation. If the thirst for becoming is about pulling things toward us, the thirst for non-existence is about violently pushing things away. It is the intense craving for a painful feeling, a difficult memory, or an unpleasant situation to simply cease to exist. When we are feeling intense anxiety, this is the voice that screams, "I can't handle this, make it stop." When we are heartbroken, it is the desperate wish to annihilate the feeling of grief. It manifests in all our avoidance strategies. It is the procrastination that puts off a difficult task. It is the resort to alcohol, drugs, or endless distraction to numb an inner pain. It is the anger that tries to destroy an obstacle in our path. At its most extreme, it is the desire to annihilate the self altogether, the wish for oblivion. This pushing away is just as much a form of thirst as the pulling towards. It is equally agitated, equally violent, and equally based on the false premise that we can control reality to suit our preferences. Both the thirst for becoming and the thirst for non-existence are rooted in a fundamental resistance to what is. One says, "I must have that to be happy," while the other says, "I must get rid of this to be happy." Both place our peace in the hands of changing conditions, ensuring that it remains forever out of reach. There is a simple, powerful parable that illustrates the self-perpetuating and destructive nature of tanha. Imagine a man adrift in a small boat on the vast, open ocean. He has been without fresh water for days, and he is tormented by a raging thirst. His throat is dry, his lips are cracked, and his mind is consumed by the single, agonizing thought of water. He is surrounded by water, an endless expanse of it, but it is salt water. He knows, intellectually, that drinking it will only make his condition worse, but the immediate, physical torment of his thirst becomes unbearable. In a moment of desperation, he leans over the side of the boat, scoops up the salt water in his hands, and drinks it down. For a fleeting second, the coolness provides a momentary illusion of relief. But this relief is a lie. Almost immediately, the salt enters his system and begins to draw the remaining moisture from his cells, making his dehydration far more severe. His thirst, which was once a fire, now becomes a raging inferno. He is now more desperately thirsty than he was before. Trapped in a cycle of delusion, he drinks again and again, each drink promising relief, but delivering only a deeper, more agonizing thirst, pulling him ever closer to his own demise. We are this person. We are adrift on the ocean of life, tormented by the soul's thirst for peace and happiness. And we continually try to quench this thirst by drinking the salt water of sense pleasures, of worldly achievements, and of angry aversion, only to find ourselves more parched, more restless, and more desperate than before. It is crucial to understand that not all desire is tanha. The path of wisdom does not ask us to become passionless, ambitionless robots. There is a profound difference between the feverish, grasping nature of thirst and a wholesome, cool intention. This wholesome intention, called chanda in the ancient texts, is the desire that leads to well-being, the desire to walk this path, the aspiration to be a kinder person, the wish for the well-being of all living things, the intention to be free from suffering. These are not tanha. Chanda is the motivation that sets us on a good road. Tanha is the addiction that keeps us running in circles. Chanda is calm, steady, and expansive. Tanha is agitated, demanding, and contractive. The journey is not about eliminating desire itself, but about transforming the unwholesome, feverish thirst into a clear, calm, and wholesome aspiration. And so, we see with clarity that this threefold thirst the thirst for pleasure, the thirst to be, and the thirst not to be is the single deep root that nourishes the great tree of Dukkha, with all its branches of anxiety, grief, anger, and despair. To see this is not to invite judgment or self-criticism. There is no blame here. We do not blame a person with a fever for being sick. We simply identify the source of the infection so that we can begin to apply the remedy. Seeing Tanha clearly is an act of empowerment. It means our suffering is not random. It is not meaningless, and it is not a punishment from some external power. It is a conditional process. And if we can understand the cause, we can begin to influence the effect. The physician has now located the source of the illness. And this leads us to the most hopeful and pivotal question on this entire journey. If this burning thirst is the cause, is there a state of being where the thirst has been quenched? Is a cure truly possible? Is there an end to suffering? We have journeyed into the heart of our own disease. We have looked with courage at the universal condition of dukkha, the pervasive dissatisfaction that colors so much of our existence. And we have stared directly at its root, the burning, relentless thirst of tanha, which drives us to endlessly seek satisfaction where it cannot be found. Standing here, with the diagnosis and its cause laid bare, a heavy question hangs in the air, a question that every human heart has asked in its darkest moments. Is this a terminal condition? Is our fate simply to wander in this desert of thirst until we are exhausted? Is there any real possibility of a cure? The wisdom of the Buddha and the third of his great noble truths answers this question with a clear, resounding, and world-changing affirmation. The answer is yes. A cure is not only possible, it is the very potential of our human consciousness. The fever can break, the thirst can be quenched. There is an end to suffering. This possibility of cessation is known by the ancient Pali word nirodha. It simply means to cease or to end. And here we must tread very carefully, for our Western minds, conditioned by a different set of concepts, can easily misunderstand this profound truth. When we hear the word cessation, we may think of annihilation, of nothingness, of a cold and empty void. We may imagine a state devoid of life, passion, and feeling. But this is a fundamental misinterpretation. Nirodha is not the cessation of life. It is the cessation of the suffering in life. It is the end of the fever, not the death of the patient. It is the end of the friction, not the end of the movement. It is the final and complete quenching of the agonizing fire of tanha, the thirst for pleasure, the thirst to be, and the thirst not to be. What remains when this fire of craving is extinguished is not a pile of cold ash, but the mind's own intrinsic nature, a state of profound peace, boundless clarity, and unshakable freedom. This state has a name that is more familiar to us, a name that has been romanticized and commercialized, yet still holds its power. That name is nirvana. Let us first clear away what nirvana is not. It is not a place. It is not a heavenly realm with pearly gates that one enters after death as a reward for good behavior. It is a state of being, a quality of mind that is accessible in this very life, in this very world. It is the psychological and spiritual equivalent of perfect health. A person who has overcome a long and painful illness does not disappear. They simply live without the burden of their disease. They can walk, run, and breathe freely. In the same way, a mind that has attained nirvana does not cease to exist. It simply ceases to be tormented. It experiences the world directly, without the distorting filters of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is not a trance-like state of blissful apathy. It is a state of heightened awareness, profound sensitivity, and immense compassion. A compassion born from the deep understanding of the suffering that arises from craving. It is not nothingness. It is the end of the frantic, neurotic activity of the ego, the me, that is constantly seeking to protect and enhance itself. When that struggle ceases, what is revealed is a peace that surpasses all understanding. The most powerful metaphor for nirvana, one that is embedded in the word itself, is that of a fire going out. The Pali word nibbana literally means to extinguish or to be blown out. Imagine your mind as a space where three great fires are constantly burning. There is the fire of greed, which is Tana itself, always grasping, always wanting more. There is the fire of hatred or aversion, the angry fire that tries to destroy whatever it finds unpleasant. And there is the fire of delusion, the smoky, confusing fire of ignorance that prevents us from seeing things as they truly are. Our lives are often spent running between these three fires, fanning their flames with our actions, thoughts, and words. We feel their heat as anxiety, their smoke as confusion, and their searing burn as anger and despair. These fires burn because we continually feed them fuel. The fuel is our clinging, our attachments, our identification with fleeting thoughts and feelings, and our fundamental misunderstanding of reality. Nirodha, or nirvana, is the state that is realized when we simply stop supplying the fuel. When there is no more fuel, a fire does not have to be violently beaten or stomped out. It does not go anywhere. It simply, naturally, and peacefully ceases to be. What is left behind is not a dark and empty hearth. What is left is a profound and wonderful coolness. This is a key descriptive word used in the ancient texts. The mind that was once hot with the fever of craving becomes cool, calm, and serene. The agitation is gone. The restlessness is gone. The struggle is over. This is the peace of nirvana. It is not a peace that is constructed or achieved through effort, but a peace that is revealed when the causes of agitation are removed. It is the natural state of the mind, just as a calm lake is the natural state of water when the winds of desire have ceased to blow across its surface. There is another beautiful parable that illuminates this truth. Imagine a room that has been sealed shut for 1,000 years. It is filled with a deep, ancient, and seemingly solid darkness. If you were to enter this room, how would you get rid of the darkness? You would not try to fight it. You would not try to shovel it out with a spade, or sweep it out with a broom, or capture it in a box. You would not yell at it or reason with it. To do so would be a futile and exhausting struggle. The nature of the darkness is that it has no substance of its own. It is merely the absence of something else. All you would need to do is light a single, small candle. In the very instant that the flame flickers into existence, the darkness of 1,000 years would vanish. It would not put up a fight. It would not retreat to a corner. It would simply be gone, replaced by light. Our suffering, our ignorance, and our relentless thirst are like that 1,000-year-old darkness. They can feel so powerful, so solid, so deeply entrenched. We are tempted to fight them, to wrestle with our demons, to try and push away our negative thoughts and feelings. But this is a battle we can never win. The path of wisdom shows us a different way. It tells us that we do not have to fight the darkness. We only need to bring in the light. The light is wisdom. The light is mindfulness. The light is the clear seeing of reality as it is. When we bring the gentle flame of awareness to our experience, the ancient darkness of our conditioning begins to dissolve. This state of cool, peaceful freedom is not an all-or-nothing proposition, reserved for saints and sages in distant caves. We can all experience small tastes, fleeting moments of nirodha in our own lives. Think of a time when you were completely absorbed in a creative act, painting, writing, playing music. For a few moments, the chattering, self-conscious mind disappeared. There was no past, no future, no sense of a me doing something. There was only the unfolding of the present moment. This is a taste of freedom. Think of a time you held a deep-seated grudge against someone, a resentment that burned inside you. And then, through an act of grace or will, you genuinely let it go. Remember the feeling of release, the immense lightness that came from putting down that heavy burden. That coolness, that relief, is a taste of nirodha. It is a glimpse of the mind freed from the fire of aversion. The spiritual path is not about waiting for one giant, cataclysmic explosion of light. It is about learning how to nurture these small flames, how to create the conditions for these moments of peace to arise more often, to last longer, and to become the steady, default background of our lives. So we stand here now, at a place of tremendous hope. The diagnosis has been made, Dukkha. The cause has been identified, Tanha, and the prognosis has been given. And it is a wonderful one. A complete recovery is possible. The state of nirodha, of nirvana, the end of suffering, is a tangible human potential. Our illness is not terminal. The freedom we seek is not a myth. It is the inherent promise of a conscious mind that is willing to see the truth. An immense sense of relief can begin to dawn in our hearts. We are not doomed to a life of quiet desperation. There is a way out of the prison of our own mind. This realization naturally gives rise to the most practical and important question of all. If this cure exists, what is the prescription? What is the specific medicine? The detailed treatment plan? The step-by-step path that leads us out of the burning desert of thirst and into the cool, shaded forest of peace? This is the fourth and final noble truth, the path itself, and it is to this ancient, practical, and life-altering blueprint that we will now turn. We stand now at a place of great promise. We have seen that our inner turmoil, our dukkha, is not a life sentence. We have seen that its cause, the insatiable thirst of tanha, can be understood. And we have been given the profound and hopeful prognosis that a cure, a state of perfect mental well-being, called nirodha, is possible. The heart, hearing this, naturally asks the most vital and practical question of all. How? What is the actual, tangible, step-by-step path that leads from the shores of suffering to the far bank of peace? What is the medicine that the great physician prescribes? The answer to this is the fourth and final noble truth. It is the path itself, the Magga. It is an ancient and detailed blueprint for living a life of wisdom, compassion, and freedom, known as the Noble Eightfold Path. This is not a list of rigid commandments handed down from on high. It is not a set of beliefs you must accept with blind faith. Rather, it is a curriculum for transformation, a set of 8 interconnected practices that, when cultivated together, systematically dismantle the causes of suffering and reveal the mind's inherent peace. Think of it not as a list of rules, but as a holistic training program for the heart and mind. Before we walk through its 8 components, it is essential to understand the spirit that animates the entire path. This is the spirit of the middle way. The Buddha, in his own quest for enlightenment, explored the 2 extremes of human life. First, he lived the life of a prince, surrounded by every imaginable sensual pleasure. He had the finest clothes, the most delicious food, constant entertainment. He experienced the pinnacle of worldly indulgence, yet he found it hollow, recognizing that chasing pleasure only leads to a deeper, more frantic thirst and a constant fear of loss. It was a life of agitation, not peace. Then, he swung to the other extreme. He left his palace and became a wandering ascetic, practicing the most severe forms of self-mortification. He starved himself until his ribs showed through his skin. He held his breath until he felt his head would explode. He exposed his body to the harshest elements. He punished his body, believing that by crushing physical desire, he could find spiritual freedom. But this extreme also failed. He found that it only led to a weakened body and a confused, exhausted mind, incapable of the clarity needed for deep insight. He had tried both hedonism and asceticism and found them both to be dead ends. Out of this direct experience, he discovered the middle way, a path of profound balance and intelligence. He compared this path to tuning a lute. If the string is too loose, it will not make a sound when you pluck it. This is the life of laxity and sensual indulgence, a life that lacks the focus and energy needed for spiritual growth. If the string is too tight, it will snap under the tension. This is the life of extreme asceticism, a life of harsh self-denial that destroys the very instrument, the body and mind, that we need for the journey. Only when the string is tuned just right, with a tension that is balanced and precise, can it produce a beautiful and resonant melody. The Noble Eightfold Path is this perfectly tuned string. It is a path that avoids extremes, a path of wakeful, compassionate, and skillful living that nourishes both body and mind, creating the ideal conditions for wisdom to flourish. This beautiful path is traditionally organized into 3 essential trainings: the training in ethical conduct, or sila, the training in mental discipline, or samadhi, and the training in wisdom, or panna. These 3 trainings contain the 8 path factors, which support and deepen one another in a powerful synergy. Let us begin with the training in wisdom, for it is this that provides the correct orientation for our journey. The first path factor is right view. This is the map. It is seeing the world and ourselves with clarity as things truly are. It means understanding, at a deep level, the very truths we have been exploring. The reality of dukkha, the cause of dukkha in our thirst, the possibility of ending dukkha, and the existence of this very path as the way to do so. It is the intellectual and intuitive grasp of the laws of cause and effect, of impermanence, and of the interdependent nature of all things. Without right view, we are like a traveler trying to navigate a vast wilderness with a flawed or completely incorrect map. No matter how much effort we exert, we will only wander in circles, becoming more and more lost. Right view sets the foundation, ensuring our efforts are directed toward liberation, not deeper entanglement. The second factor in the training of wisdom is right intention, or sometimes translated as right thought. If right view is the map, then right intention is the compass. It is the conscious cultivation of thoughts and intentions that are aligned with our goal. It involves turning the mind away from unwholesome states and toward wholesome ones. Specifically, this means cultivating 3 intentions. The intention of renunciation, which is the willingness to let go of our clinging and attachments. The intention of loving, kindness, which is the sincere wish for the well-being and happiness of all beings, including ourselves. And the intention of harmlessness, or compassion, which is the firm resolve not to cause harm to any living creature. Right intention ensures that our journey is not a selfish pursuit, but one that is infused with kindness and a deep care for the world. Next is the training in ethical conduct, or sila, which grounds our spiritual practice in our daily interactions with the world. It includes 3 factors. The first is right speech. This is the practice of using our words with mindfulness and compassion. It means abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh or abusive language that wounds others, and from idle chatter that clutters the mind and wastes time. Instead, we cultivate speech that is truthful, kind, helpful, and spoken at the right time. In our modern age of social media and constant communication, the practice of right speech is more crucial than ever. The second factor of ethical conduct is right action. This involves aligning our physical actions with our compassionate intentions. At its core, it is about living in a way that does not cause harm. It is traditionally based on the 5 precepts, which are not commandments but personal trainings: to abstain from killing, from stealing, from sexual misconduct, from false speech, and from intoxicants that lead to heedlessness. Living by these guidelines creates a life of integrity and simplicity, which in turn creates a mind that is calm and free from remorsey mind, perfectly suited for meditation. The third ethical factor is right livelihood. This practice extends our ethics into our professional and economic life. It means earning a living in a way that is honest, honorable, and does not bring harm to other beings or to the planet. This encourages us to avoid professions based on deception, such as false advertising, on exploitation, such as the trading of weapons or human beings, or on causing harm, such as the slaughter of animals or the selling of intoxicants. Right livelihood asks us to consider the impact of our work, ensuring that our entire life, not just our time on the meditation cushion, is an expression of our deepest values. Finally, we come to the training in mental discipline, or samadhi, which is the heart of the meditative practice itself. It involves the last 3 factors. The first of these is right effort. This is the gentle but persistent energy we apply to our inner world. It's the effort to prevent unwholesome, negative states from arising, the effort to abandon them if they have already arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome, positive states that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain and perfect those positive states that are already present. It is the work of a skillful gardener, patiently tending the garden of the mind, pulling the weeds of negativity and nurturing the flowers of peace and clarity. The 7th factor, and perhaps the most famous, is right mindfulness. This is the cornerstone of the meditative path. It is the practice of maintaining a bare, non-judgmental awareness of our experience in the present moment. This means paying attention to our body, our feelings, the activity of our mind, and the fundamental nature of reality, moment by moment by moment. It is the art of waking up from the dream of our discursive thoughts and learning to inhabit our lives as they are actually happening. It is through mindfulness that we gain the insights that transform right view from an intellectual understanding into a lived reality. The final factor of the path is right concentration. This is the fruit of sustained mindfulness and effort. It is the ability of the mind to unify itself, to become still and focused on a single object of meditation. As the mind becomes more concentrated, the turbulent waves of thought begin to settle, revealing a profound stillness, joy, and clarity. It is from this stable, concentrated state that the deepest insights into the nature of reality can arise. Insights that have the power to cut the roots of suffering once and for all. These 8 factors are not a linear series of steps to be mastered one by one. They are like the different strands of a single powerful rope. They all work together, each one supporting and strengthening the others. A commitment to ethical living makes the mind calmer and more stable for meditation. The practice of meditation and mindfulness sharpens our awareness, allowing us to see more clearly and thus strengthening our wisdom. And as our wisdom deepens, our commitment to living ethically and compassionately becomes effortless and natural. They create an upward spiral of positive reinforcement, leading the practitioner steadily out of confusion and into a state of freedom. This is the blueprint. This is the prescription. It is a complete and beautiful guide to human flourishing. Looking at this whole map can feel inspiring, but also perhaps daunting. So, where does one place their foot to take the very first step? For most who begin this journey, the training starts with the most fundamental tool we possess, the one thing that is always with us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It begins with the simple, humble, and profoundly powerful act of paying attention to the breath. We have unfolded the ancient blueprint, the noble eightfold path, a complete and beautiful guide for a life of freedom. It can seem vast, like a map of a newly discovered continent, filled with mountains to climb and rivers to cross. A question naturally arises in the heart of the traveler. Where do I take the very first step? Where in this vast landscape of wisdom, ethics, and mental training do I place my foot to begin the journey home? The answer, offered by the great teachers throughout the ages, is exquisitely simple. We begin not by trying to grasp a complex philosophy, but by returning to the most intimate, humble, and constant companion of our lives. We begin with the breath. The practice is called Anapanasati, which translates literally as mindfulness of in and out breathing. This is not a mysterious or esoteric technique. It is a profound act of homecoming. It is the foundational practice that anchors our restless mind, allowing us to build the stability and clarity needed for the rest of this transformative journey. Why the breath? Of all the possible things we could pay attention to, why this simple, repetitive, biological function? The wisdom of this choice is manifold and profound. First, the breath is always with you. You might forget your keys, your phone, or your wallet, but you never leave your breath behind. It is with you from the moment you are born to the moment you die. It requires no special equipment, no particular location, no fee for admission. It is the most accessible and democratic object of meditation imaginable. Second, the breath is always in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take one that is in the future. To be truly aware of the sensation of breathing is, by definition, to be fully present in the here and now. In a world that constantly pulls our attention into the regrets of yesterday and the anxieties of tomorrow, the breath is a powerful and reliable anchor that moors us in the only moment where life is ever actually lived, this one. Furthermore, the breath is neutral. Unlike our thoughts and emotions, which are often charged with drama, history, and judgment, the breath itself has no story. An in-breath is simply an in-breath. An out-breath is simply an out-breath. It is not a good breath or a bad breath, a successful breath or a failed breath. It simply is. This neutrality provides a place of refuge, a calm center in the midst of our inner storms. When we rest our attention on the breath, we are taking a break from the exhausting narrative of our lives. And on a physiological level, this ancient practice has an effect that modern science is only now beginning to fully appreciate. When we intentionally place our attention on the slow, rhythmic cadence of our breathing, we send a powerful signal to our nervous system. We begin to disengage the sympathetic nervous system, our internal alarm system, responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze response that fuels so much of our chronic stress. Simultaneously, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, that lowers our heart rate, reduces our blood pressure, and allows our body and mind to enter a state of healing and deep calm. This simple act of awareness is a direct, manual override for the anxiety mechanisms of the modern world. So, how do we practice? The instructions are beautiful in their simplicity. First, find a posture that embodies both dignity and ease. You can sit on a cushion on the floor with your legs crossed, or you can sit upright in a chair with your feet flat on the ground. The key is to keep your back straight, but not stiff, like a stack of golden coins, allowing the energy to flow freely. Let your hands rest comfortably in your lap or on your knees. Allow your eyes to gently close, or if you prefer, you can keep them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze toward the floor. The invitation is not one of striving, but of settling. Feel the weight of your body, the points of contact with the chair or cushion. Simply arrive in this moment. Now, gently bring your attention to the physical sensations of breathing. Don't try to control your breath or change it in any way. Just allow it to be natural. Your only task is to feel it. Where do you feel the breath most vividly? For some, it is the cool sensation of the air entering and leaving the nostrils. For others, it is the gentle rise and fall of the chest. Or perhaps you feel it most deeply in the expansion and contraction of the abdomen. There is no right or wrong place. Simply find the spot that is clearest for you, and let that be your home base, your anchor point. Rest your attention there, as you might rest your hand on a smooth, familiar stone. Your job is simply to know. Know when the breath is coming in. Know when the breath is going out. You don't have to say the words in and out in your head, though you can if it helps you to stay focused at first. The practice is to connect with the raw, physical sensation of it. Feel the entire duration of the in-breath, from its beginning, through its middle, to its very end. And feel the entire duration of the out-breath, from its beginning to its end. Be an intimate witness to this simple, life-giving rhythm. Inevitably, and this is a promise, your mind will wander. This is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are a bad meditator or that you are failing. It is simply the nature of an untrained mind. The mind produces thoughts, just as the salivary glands produce saliva. It is what it is built to do. It will wander off into planning your dinner, replaying a conversation from yesterday, worrying about a meeting next week, or drifting into a fantasy. The moment you realize this has happened, the moment you become aware that you are no longer feeling the breath, but are instead lost in a train of thought, that very moment is a moment of pure gold. That is a moment of mindfulness. You have woken up, and what do you do in that moment of waking up? You do something radical. You don't criticize yourself. You don't get frustrated or sigh with disappointment. You simply, gently, and with great kindness, acknowledge where the mind has been, thinking or worrying, and then you softly guide your attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. This act of returning, over and over and over again, is the core of the practice. Every time you guide your mind back to the breath, you are strengthening the muscle of your attention. Each return is like a single bicep curl for the mind. At first, you may have to return it every few seconds. That is perfectly fine. The goal is not to have a mind that is empty of thought, but to cultivate a mind that is aware and a heart that is patient and kind with its own inner workings. There is a classic metaphor for this process. The mind is compared to a wild elephant, powerful and accustomed to roaming wherever it pleases. The meditator is the elephant tamer. The sturdy post we use to tame the elephant is the object of our meditation, the breath. The rope we use to tie the elephant to the post is mindfulness. At first, when we tie the wild elephant of the mind to the post of the breath, it will not like it. It will strain against the rope, trumpet with frustration, and try with all its might to run back into the jungle of distraction. But the tamer remains patient. He just makes sure the rope is secure. He doesn't beat the elephant. He simply allows it to exhaust its frantic energy, and eventually, the elephant realizes it is tied to the post, and it calms down. It may even lie down and rest peacefully by the post. In the same way, when we consistently and gently return our attention to the breath, the wild energy of the mind begins to settle, and we discover a deep stillness that was there all along. This simple practice of watching the breath is the gymnasium of the spirit. It is where we train in the core skills of concentration and awareness. It is far more than a mere relaxation technique. It is the laboratory in which we begin to observe the very mechanics of our own suffering and liberation. And as we sit, patiently returning again and again to our anchor, something remarkable begins to happen. The boat is now tethered, but we become increasingly aware of the weather. We start to see, with startling clarity, the endless parade of thoughts, feelings, and sensations that march through our consciousness. We see the clouds of judgment, the storms of anxiety, the sudden sunshine of a happy memory. Our anchor in the breath now gives us the stability to observe this inner weather without being swept away by it. And it is to this sky of the mind and the endless clouds of thought that drift across it that we will now turn our full and compassionate attention. Having found our anchor in the gentle, rhythmic tide of the breath, we have created a small island of stability in the vast ocean of the mind. From this quiet shore, we begin to notice the true nature of the sea itself. We see its constant motion, the endless waves of thought, feeling, and memory that rise and fall without cease. Our first instinct, faced with this relentless internal chatter, is often one of despair. We think, I can't stop my thoughts. My mind is too busy. I am failing at this. We believe the goal is to achieve a state of perfect, empty silence, and we become frustrated when this seems impossible. But this is a misunderstanding of the path. The goal is not to stop the waves. The goal is to learn how to surf. The next great stage of our journey is not to wage war against our thoughts, but to radically change our relationship to them. The single most profound and liberating insight that arises from this practice is this: you are not your thoughts. Let this statement sink in, for it is the key that unlocks the prison of the anxious mind. From childhood, we are conditioned to believe the opposite. We are taught to fuse our identity with the content of our consciousness. A thought of sadness arises, and we declare, I am sad. A thought of incompetence arises, and we conclude, I am a failure. An angry thought flashes through the mind, and we believe, I am an angry person. We treat every thought that appears on the screen of our mind as an absolute truth, a direct and accurate report on reality, and most importantly, on who we are. We become the protagonists in the never-ending movie of our own thinking, and we are completely swept away by its drama, its tragedies, and its comedies. This deep and habitual misidentification is the very source of our psychological suffering. The practice of mindfulness invites us to a revolutionary shift in perspective. It asks us to consider the possibility that we are not the thoughts, but rather the silent, spacious awareness in which the thoughts appear. Imagine for a moment the difference between these two statements. The first is, I am a complete mess. Feel the weight of those words. It is a solid, heavy, and damning judgment. It defines your entire being. There is no room to move. It is a declaration of fact. Now consider a second statement. I am aware of the thought that I am a complete mess. Can you feel the difference? A space has just opened up. The thought is no longer a fact that defines you. It has become an event that you are observing. It is something that is happening in your mind, but it is not the totality of who you are. In that space between the awareness and the thought, there is freedom, there is perspective, there is peace. You are no longer the prisoner of the thought. You are the wise warden of the prison, observing its inhabitants without being defined by them. The most enduring metaphor for this relationship is that of the sky and the clouds. Your true nature, that core of pristine awareness within you, is like a vast, open, and luminous blue sky. It is inherently peaceful, clear, and limitless. It has been there your entire life, and it is untouched by anything that happens within it. Your thoughts, emotions, and sensations are like the weather. They are the clouds that drift across the vastness of the sky. Sometimes, there are dark, heavy storm clouds of anger, grief, or fear. They can block out the sun and fill the world with thunder and lightning. Sometimes there are light, fluffy, white clouds of happiness and joy that drift by lazily on a summer breeze. Sometimes the sky is filled with a grey, hazy overcast of confusion or boredom. At other times, it is completely clear. The profound truth is this: the weather is not the sky. The clouds are not the sky. The most violent thunderstorm cannot stain, scar, or damage the sky itself. It can obscure the blue for a while, making us forget that the vast, peaceful expanse is even there. But behind the darkest clouds, the sky remains, unstained and serene. And when the storm inevitably passes, the sky is revealed again, as pure and as vast as it was before. Our spiritual practice is the art of learning to shift our identification from the ever-changing weather of our thoughts and feelings to the vast, unchanging, ever-present sky of awareness itself. We learn to rest as this open, accepting space, allowing the beautiful and the terrible weather of our human life to pass through without resistance and without clinging. To help cultivate this skill, we can use a gentle and practical technique, often called noting or labeling. As you rest your attention on the breath and you notice the mind has been pulled away by a thought, you can make a soft, silent, one-word mental note of the type of thought it is. For example, if you find yourself mentally rehearsing a presentation for work, you can just softly note planning. If you are caught in a spiral of anxiety about your finances, you can just note worrying. If you find yourself lost in a memory from your childhood, remembering. If you are thinking about what someone said to you, imagining. If you are being hard on yourself, judging. The tone of this note is crucial. It is not a sharp, analytical dissection. It is light, gentle, and non-judgmental, like a feather lightly touching a soap bubble. The purpose of this noting is twofold. First, it short-circuits the storyline. The moment you label worrying, you have stepped out of the content of the worry itself. You are no longer lost in the dramatic narrative of what might go wrong. You are simply seeing the process of worry itself. It's like being engrossed in a movie, and then suddenly realizing, oh, I'm sitting in a theater, watching a film. The spell is broken. Second, it depersonalizes the thought. By seeing judging instead of, I am so judgmental, you begin to recognize these thought patterns as impersonal mental habits, conditioned over years of repetition. They are not you. They are simply activities the mind engages in. After making the soft note, you do not analyze it further. You simply and gently guide your attention back to your anchor, the physical sensation of the breath. We can also think of our thoughts as visitors to our home. Some are pleasant and welcome. Others are rude, disruptive, and unwanted. Our usual habit is to react in one of two ways. We either chase the unwanted guests out, yelling at them to leave, which only creates more commotion and struggle, suppression. Or we invite them all in, serve them tea, and listen to all their stories and complaints until they have completely taken over our house. Identification and indulgence. The mindful path offers a third option. We can learn to be a gracious but firm host at the front door. When a thought like anger arrives, we can acknowledge it with polite awareness. Ah, anger, I see you are here. We don't have to slam the door in its face, nor do we have to let it in to smash the furniture. We can simply acknowledge its presence and let it go on its way, while we return to the quiet business of tending to our own home, which is the peace of the present moment, anchored in the breath. By practicing in this way, by observing our thoughts as transient mental events, like clouds passing in the sky, we begin to learn a deep and visceral lesson not just about thoughts, but about the nature of reality itself. We see with our own direct experience that thoughts are impermanent. They arise from causes and conditions. They stay for a short while, and then they dissolve. They have no solid, independent existence. They are fleeting, insubstantial, and dreamlike. This direct seeing, this intimate understanding of the transient nature of our own inner world, is the gateway to one of the most powerful and liberating insights of this path. It opens the door to understanding the universal law of impermanence, the truth that all of existence, both internal and external, is in a state of constant, dynamic flow. And it is to this vast, challenging, and ultimately freeing truth of constant change that our journey will now take us. As we rest in the quiet stability of the anchored mind, watching the ceaseless parade of our own thoughts, we begin to perceive a truth far deeper than the contents of the mind itself. We notice that the thoughts are not solid entities. They are like clouds, appearing from nowhere, lingering for a moment, and then dissolving back into the vast sky of awareness. This direct, personal observation is our gateway to understanding one of the most profound and fundamental laws of the universe, a truth the Buddha called Anicca. The word is often translated as impermanence, but it also carries the sense of inconstancy, transience, and uninterruptible flow. It is the recognition that everything, without exception, is in a state of constant change. To truly grasp the depth of Anicca is to unlock a freedom that is not dependent on circumstances, a peace that can coexist with the inevitable gains and losses of life. Let us widen our gaze from our own inner world to the world around us. We see Anicca everywhere. We see it in the grand sweep of the seasons, the budding life of spring, giving way to the full bloom of summer, which mellows into the vibrant decay of autumn and settles into the deep rest of winter, only to begin the cycle anew. We see it in the sky above us, in the rising and setting of the sun, the waxing and waning of the moon. On a grander scale, modern science confirms what the Buddha saw with intuitive clarity. The entire cosmos is a dance of impermanence. Stars are born in fiery nebulae. They burn for billions of years, and then they die, collapsing into white dwarfs or exploding in brilliant supernovae, scattering their elements across space to become the building blocks of new stars, new planets, and new life. Mountains are not static monoliths. They are being thrust up by tectonic plates, while simultaneously being worn down by wind and rain. Nothing is exempt from this universal law of flow. Now, bring this awareness closer to home, into your own life. Think of your relationships. The passionate intensity of a new love transforms into the quiet comfort of long-term companionship. Friendships ebb and flow as lives and interests diverge. The town you grew up in has changed. New buildings have gone up. Old ones have come down. Your own career, your hobbies, your opinions, are they the same as they were 10 years ago? Even the knowledge we hold to be true is constantly being updated and revised. Our lives are not a series of static photographs, but a single, long exposure film capturing the constant motion of our existence. And where is this truth more intimate and undeniable than in our own bodies? We tend to think of our body as a solid, continuous thing, the same me from day to day. But biology tells a different story. Your body is not a noun, it is a verb. It is a process. Every second, millions of your cells are dying and millions of new ones are being born. Your skin replaces itself every month. Your skeleton, which seems so solid, is completely regenerated over the course of about a decade. You are quite literally not the same person, physically, that you were years ago. You are a flowing river of flesh, blood, and bone, a walking, breathing testament to the law of Anicca. The pain of life, the deep ache of Dukkha, does not arise from the fact of change itself. Change is neutral. It is simply the way things are. The suffering arises from our profound and deeply conditioned resistance to this truth. We are creatures who crave permanence in a world that offers none. We try to build our house on the frozen surface of a river, and then we are filled with shock, grief, and anger when the spring thaw inevitably comes and the ice breaks apart beneath our feet. We cling to youth, to health, to pleasant moments, to people we love, desperately trying to hold them still, to prevent them from changing and slipping through our fingers. The suffering is in the clinging. It is in the tension of our white-knuckled grip on things that, by their very nature, cannot be held. We want our happiness to be permanent, our relationships to be static, our identities to be fixed. And because reality does not conform to our wants, we live in a state of constant, low-grade friction with the universe itself. There is a beautiful story from the life of the great Thai forest master, Ajahn Chah. He would often teach his disciples using the simple objects around him. One day, he picked up a glass. "You see this glass?" he asked. "I love this glass. It holds the water admirably. When the light shines on it, it reflects the light beautifully. But for me, this glass is already broken." He went on to explain that he recognizes and accepts its inherent nature. He knows that one day, a gust of wind, a slip of the hand, or some other cause will lead to it shattering on the floor. He has already accepted this future, and because he has fully accepted its impermanence, he can enjoy it completely in the present. He can appreciate its beauty and its usefulness without the underlying anxiety and fear of its eventual loss. When the day comes that it finally breaks, he will not be shocked or distraught. He will simply say, "Of course, we must learn to hold our lives in the same way. We must learn to hold our bodies, our loved ones, our moments of joy, and our possessions with the same wise tenderness, appreciating them fully, caring for them deeply, but with the quiet, liberating understanding that they are all already broken, already subject to the unyielding law of change." This understanding is not a recipe for morbid pessimism. In fact, it is the very foundation of hope. If things were permanent, there could be no growth, no healing, no transformation. If a state of sadness were permanent, we would be trapped in it forever. If a mistake were permanent, it would be an indelible stain on our character. If a tyrant's rule were permanent, there would be no possibility of freedom. It is because of Anicca that everything is possible. A heart broken by grief can heal. An addict can find sobriety. A person filled with anger can learn to be patient. A difficult situation at work will eventually change. The very fact that things do not last is what allows for renewal, for forgiveness, and for progress. The ancient adage, "This too shall pass," is not a mere platitude to soothe a troubled mind. It is a statement of profound and practical truth, whispered in times of great joy. It reminds us to be present, to be grateful, and not to cling, for the moment is precious, precisely because it is fleeting. Whispered in times of great sorrow, it reminds us to be patient, to be courageous, and not to despair, for the storm will not last forever. And so, we learn to relax our grip. We learn to open our hand and allow the river of life to flow through it. We see that impermanence is not a threat to our happiness, but the very condition that makes it possible. It is the rhythmic heartbeat of reality, the great cosmic breath of creation and dissolution. To fight against it is to exhaust ourselves in a futile struggle. To align ourselves with it, to learn to flow with its current, is to find a peace that is dynamic, resilient, and alive. This deep, experiential insight into the nature of change, which began with watching a single thought and has now expanded to encompass all of existence, leads us to a fascinating and pivotal question. If everything is constantly changing our body, our feelings, our thoughts, our world, then who is the unchanging I that is experiencing all of this? Is there a solid, permanent self, a stable riverbank from which we watch the flow? Or is that sense of a solid self just one more illusion, just another part of the ever-changing river? This profound inquiry into the nature of the self is the next monumental step on our journey into the heart of reality. We have walked the path of inquiry to a breathtaking vista. We have seen that the entirety of our experience, from the thoughts in our minds to the stars in the cosmos, is governed by the universal law of Anicca, or impermanence. Everything is a flowing, dynamic, and ever-changing river. This profound insight inevitably leads us to the most intimate and challenging question of all. If everything is in flux, what about the one who seems to be witnessing it all? What about the I at the center of my universe? Is this self a solid, unchanging entity standing on the riverbank? Or is it too a part of the river's flow? It is here that we encounter the most unique, subtle, and radically liberating teaching of the Buddha. It is the truth of anatta, a concept often translated as not self, non-self, or egolessness. To approach this teaching is to approach the very heart of freedom, for it offers not the destruction of our being, but the dissolution of the cage we did not know we were living in. At first, the idea of not self can be frightening. It sounds like a cold, nihilistic denial of our own existence. We think, if I am not a self, am I nothing? This is a natural fear, but it is based on a misunderstanding. Anatta is not a declaration that you do not exist. You are clearly here. Reading these words, breathing, thinking, feeling. Anatta is the declaration that you do not exist in the way you think you do. The common sense view we all carry is that somewhere inside this body and mind, there is a permanent, independent, and continuous me. We see it as a kind of chief executive officer in the control room of the brain, a soul, a static essence that owns our thoughts and feelings. The teaching of anatta invites us on an investigation to see if we can actually find such an entity. Let us look for this self. Where could it be? Is it in your body? You might point to your chest and say, "This is me." But your body, as we have seen, is a constantly changing process. of cellular birth and death, governed by the law of Anicca. You could lose a limb or receive an organ transplant, and the sense of I would remain. So the self cannot be equated with the physical body. Well, is it your feelings? Are you your happiness or your sadness? But feelings are like the weather, fleeting and unreliable. If you were your feelings, your identity would shatter and reform from moment to moment. Is it your thoughts? A thought is the most ephemeral thing imaginable, a flash of electricity and chemistry in the brain. It appears and vanishes in an instant. Clearly, you are not any single thought. Perhaps, then, the self is a collection of memories, a life story. But memories are notoriously fallible. They are edited, and they too change over time. The I feels more fundamental than a mere story. The investigation always leads to the same place. When we look for a solid, independent, unchanging self, we cannot find one. We find only a collection of interconnected, impermanent processes. The Buddha systematically analyzed what we call a person and broke it down into 5 key components, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. These are the building blocks of our experience. The first is form, which is the physical body and all matter. The second is feeling, the raw sensations that arise from contact, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The third is perception, the mental faculty that recognizes and labels things. It's what identifies a sound as music or a shape as a tree. The fourth, and a very complex category, is mental formations. This includes all our thoughts, intentions, moods, habits, prejudices, and volitional actions. It is the active, creative part of the mind. The fifth is consciousness, the faculty of awareness itself, which arises in dependence on the other 4. It is the consciousness of a sight, of a sound, of a thought. What we conventionally call a self, an I or me, is, according to this analysis, nothing more than the dynamic interplay of these 5 ever-changing processes. The self is not a thing, but an event. It is a temporary pattern created by the combination of these aggregates, much like a whirlpool is a temporary pattern created by the flow of water in a stream. The whirlpool has a recognizable form, but it has no independent existence separate from the water. In the same way, the self has a recognizable, conventional existence, but no ultimate, solid reality. There is a famous and brilliant story from the Buddhist texts that illustrates this perfectly. A Greek king named Melinda, a great scholar and debater, sought out a Buddhist sage named Nagasena to challenge him on this very point. "What is your name, venerable sir?" the king asked. Nagasena replied that his brothers in the holy life called him Nagasena, but it was only a designation, a name, for there was no permanent person to be found. The king was incredulous. He challenged the monk, saying, "If there is no person, then who is it that receives robes, food, and lodging? Who is it that practices meditation? Who attains nirvana?" He argued that if Nagasena's words were true, then all of life would be meaningless. Nagasena, a masterful teacher, turned the inquiry back upon the king. He asked, "Your Majesty, you are of noble birth. How did you arrive here today? Did you walk, or did you come in a chariot?" The king, proud of his royal stature, replied, "I came in a chariot." "Very good," said Nagasena. "Then please, Your Majesty, define for me what a chariot is. Is the pole the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," said the king. "Are the wheels the chariot? Is the axle the chariot? The frame, the yoke, the reins?" To each question, the king had to answer no. Then, Nagasena continued, "Are all these parts combined together the chariot?" "No, venerable sir." Then is the chariot something else? Something entirely separate from all of its parts? No, venerable sir, the king admitted. Nagasena then delivered his profound conclusion. Your Majesty, you have just told me that you came in a chariot. But when I ask you to define what a chariot is, you cannot find it. Chariot is simply a name, a convenient label, a conventional designation we give to a particular assembly of parts. When the wheels, the axle, the pole, and the frame are all put together in the right way, we call this functional assembly a chariot. It exists conventionally, but it has no ultimate, inherent existence of its own. He then brought the analogy home. In just the same way, Nagasena is a conventional designation for the ever-changing combination of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. In ultimate reality, no permanent person or self can be found. Understanding anatta is not an intellectual exercise. It is a profound unburdening. The illusion of a solid, separate self is the heaviest baggage we carry. It is the root of so much of our anxiety and distress. Think about it. If there is no fixed self to defend, who is it that feels insulted when someone criticizes us? The sting of criticism loses its power when we realize it is aimed at a fleeting collection of processes, not a solid entity. If there is no permanent self to aggrandize, what happens to the exhausting project of ego? The need to be right, the poison of jealousy, the ache of pride, and the fear of failure all begin to lose their fuel. The constant, draining effort of maintaining and polishing a perfect self-image for the world can finally be relaxed. We can afford to be vulnerable, to be imperfect, to be simply human. Furthermore, when the hard, artificial boundary between me and you begins to dissolve, the ground for true compassion is revealed. When we see that another person is also just a unique expression of these 5 changing aggregates, their suffering is no longer their problem. We see that their anger, their fear, and their confusion arise from the same causes and conditions as our own. The illusion of separation gives way to a felt sense of profound interconnection. We are all waves in the same ocean. The pain of another wave is, in a very real sense, our pain too. To let go of the belief in a solid self is not to lose anything of value. It is to lose a source of endless trouble. It is to step out of a small, cramped room and into a vast, open field. We do not become nothing. In a way, we become everything. We lose the isolated, fictional character and merge back into the great, interconnected, and dynamic play of life itself. This dissolving of the self as a separate entity, this opening of the heart to our shared existence, prepares the ground perfectly for the next stage of our journey, the active, intentional cultivation of boundless goodwill and unconditional friendliness toward all of life, beginning with ourselves. It is the practice that the Buddha called metta, or loving kindness. When we begin to see through the illusion of a solid, separate self, when we understand that this I is not a fortress to be defended, but a process to be witnessed, a space begins to open within us. For so long, our energy has been consumed by protecting this fragile identity, by polishing its image, by defending its territory against perceived slights and threats. But with the wisdom of anatta, of non-self, a profound question arises. Now that the guard is no longer needed at the gate, what shall we do with this newfound inner space? What shall we cultivate in the fertile soil of a heart that is no longer preoccupied with itself? The answer, offered by the wisest traditions of humanity, is a gentle rain that nourishes all that it touches. It is the practice of metta, a word often translated as loving kindness, but which carries a meaning far deeper than simple affection. Metta is not the transactional, conditional love of romance and poetry, which so often depends on what we receive in return. It is not a fleeting emotion that comes and goes with our moods. Metta is a universal, unconditional, and benevolent goodwill. It is a deep and sincere wish for all beings, without exception, to be happy and free from suffering. And most importantly, it is not something we must wait to feel. It is something we can choose to cultivate. It is a skill, a form of mental training known as bhavana, which means to bring into being. We are not trying to find metta. We are actively creating it, nurturing it, and allowing it to become the natural climate of our minds. This practice is the direct and powerful antidote to the poisons of anger, resentment, ill will, and judgment. In the landscape of the mind, you cannot have both the warmth of the sun and the cold of a bitter frost at the same time. When you intentionally cultivate the warmth of metta, the coldness of anger and resentment simply cannot survive. They begin to melt away, not through force or suppression, but through the persistent application of a greater, more wholesome quality. Anger and fear cause the heart to contract, to become small, hard, and isolated. Metta does the opposite. It opens the heart, makes it soft, resilient, and boundless. It is a healing balm for the feeling of separation that haunts modern life, the subtle loneliness that can exist even in a crowd. It reminds us of our shared, fundamental nature, our common wish to be happy. The journey of metta, like all profound journeys, begins at home. It begins with ourselves. In many Western cultures, this is often the most difficult step. We are trained to be our own harshest critics, to see our flaws magnified, to believe that self-love is a form of arrogance. But the wisdom of this path teaches us that you cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot offer genuine warmth to others if your own heart is a cold and barren place. To wish happiness for others while denying it to ourselves is a subtle form of hypocrisy that the mind cannot sustain. Therefore, the practice always begins by turning the gentle rain of loving kindness inward. Find a comfortable posture and gently close your eyes. Allow your awareness to settle in your body. For a few moments, simply be present. Then, bring yourself to mind as you would a beloved child. Let go of the stories, the judgments, the lists of accomplishments and failures. Simply connect with the living, breathing being that you are. And then, with sincerity, begin to offer the phrases of metta to yourself. You can say them silently, letting them resonate in the space of your heart. May I be safe. This is a wish for safety from all inner and outer harms, safety from the harm of others, and safety from the harm of our own unwholesome thoughts and actions. May I be healthy. A wish for the well-being of the body, for strength and vitality, but also for a healthy mind. A mind that is resilient and clear. May I be peaceful. This is a wish for inner peace, for a heart that is free from the turmoil of anxiety, worry, and restlessness. A wish for a calm and tranquil spirit. May I live with ease. This is not a wish for a life without challenges, for that is impossible. It is a wish to navigate the challenges of life with a sense of grace, resilience, and less struggle. To move through the world with a lighter heart. Repeat these phrases slowly, gently. Don't worry if you don't feel a sudden rush of emotion. The purpose is not to force a feeling, but to gently incline the mind, to plant the seeds. With every repetition, you are watering these seeds of kindness within you. Stay with yourself for as long as it feels right. establishing this foundation of self-compassion. This is the bedrock upon which all further practice is built. Once you have established a measure of warmth for yourself, you can begin to expand the circle. Now, bring to mind a person for whom you have easy, uncomplicated feelings of affection. This could be a dear friend, a mentor, a family member, or even a beloved pet. Picture them in your mind's eye. See them happy and smiling. Notice the natural feeling of warmth that arises when you think of them. Now, channel that warmth and direct it towards them using the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease. Feel the genuine wish for their well-being flowing from your heart to theirs. There is no effort here, just an intentional directing of a love that is already present. This stage of the practice reminds us what metta feels like in its most natural form. The next step stretches our capacity for kindness. Bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you feel neither like nor dislike. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, the person who delivers your mail, or someone you pass on your daily walk. We so often see these people as mere functions, not as complex human beings with their own hopes, fears, and dreams. In this moment, bring their face to mind and see them as a whole person. Recognize that just like you, their deepest wish is to be happy and to avoid suffering. And then extend the very same phrases of metta to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease. This is a powerful practice. It begins to dissolve the invisible walls of indifference that we build around ourselves. It transforms the world from a collection of strangers into a community of fellow beings, each one worthy of our care and goodwill. Now, we approach the most challenging and perhaps most transformative stage of the practice. Bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict, who has caused you pain, or whose actions you find hard to understand. The instruction here is very precise and very important. You are not being asked to condone their harmful actions. You are not being asked to force yourself to like them or to become their best friend. The practice of metta is not about pretending that harm did not occur. It is about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying hatred in your own heart. Remember the Buddha's words, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. So, for your own sake, for the sake of your own peace, you practice. You bring this person to mind, and you recognize that their harmful actions come from their own suffering, their own confusion, their own pain. A happy, peaceful person does not cause harm to others. Seeing this, you can offer a wise and compassionate form of metta. May you be free from the anger that causes you to suffer. May you find peace. May your heart be healed from the hatred that drives you. May you be well. This is not a blessing of their behavior, but a wish for them to be free from the very conditions that cause that behavior. It is an act of profound spiritual courage, and it is the key that unlocks the prison of resentment, freeing not the other person, but yourself. Finally, having opened the heart in these progressive stages, you let the circle become infinite. Let the feeling of loving kindness expand from your heart outwards, in all directions, forward, backward, to the left, to the right, above and below, to everyone in your building, your city, your country, to all people on this continent and all continents, to friends and to enemies, to the young and the old, the sick and the well, to all animals, in the sky, on the land, and in the water, to all beings, seen and unseen, near and far. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings live with ease. Rest in this state of boundless, universal goodwill, a heart that excludes no one. There is a powerful story that illustrates the true force of metta. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to have him killed. He arranged for the fiercest elephant in the kingdom, Nalagiri, to be intoxicated with alcohol and set loose on the path where the Buddha was walking. As the enraged elephant charged, trumpeting furiously, the Buddha's followers panicked and fled. But the Buddha and his closest attendant, Ananda, stood their ground. Ananda, in his fear, tried to stand in front of the Buddha to protect him, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He did not prepare a weapon. He did not run. He did not even show a flicker of fear. Instead, he simply stood and radiated a powerful, unwavering, boundless field of pure metta towards the charging beast. The elephant, a creature of pure instinct and rage, felt this immense wave of unconditional love and safety. It was a feeling it had never known. Its charge began to slow. Its trumpeting subsided. It came to a stop before the Buddha, and in an act of complete submission and peace, it knelt down, allowing the Buddha to gently and lovingly stroke its forehead. This story shows us that metta is not a weak, sentimental, or passive state. It is a profound inner strength, a force capable of taming the most violent rage, both within ourselves and in the world around us. When we practice metta, we are not just changing our mood for a few minutes on a cushion. We are rewiring our brain and reshaping our heart. We are learning to meet the world not with suspicion and fear, but with an open and kind presence. This practice softens the sharp edges of our judgments, reduces social anxiety, and allows us to feel a genuine connection to others. It is a practice you can take off the cushion and into your life. You can silently offer metta to the person ahead of you in a long line, to the driver who cuts you off in traffic, to a colleague before a stressful meeting. It becomes a secret, silent gift you can offer the world at any moment. A gift that transforms you in the giving. It is the heart's beautiful and courageous response to the insight of wisdom. It fills the space of non-self with a warmth that connects us to all of life. But as we cultivate this wish for all beings to be happy, we inevitably encounter the reality that many beings are not. We see their very real and present suffering. How do we respond then, when our wish for their happiness meets the raw fact of their pain? This question leads us from the gentle rain of loving kindness to the deep river of compassion. The gentle rain of loving kindness, metta, is a beautiful and sincere wish for all beings to be happy. We cultivate it in our hearts, hoping it nourishes the world around us. But inevitably, this warm wish will encounter the cold, hard reality of pain. We will see our loved ones fall ill. We will hear of tragedies in distant lands. We will witness the quiet desperation in the eyes of a stranger. In these moments, our wish for happiness is met by the undeniable presence of suffering. What does the heart do then? It does not turn away. It does not shatter. A heart that has been softened by metta, when it touches pain, gives rise to its sacred sibling, karuna, or compassion. If metta is the wish for happiness, karuna is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, coupled with the sincere aspiration to see that suffering relieved. It is not a sad or sorrowful state, but a profoundly empowering one. It is the heart's brave and active response to the reality of pain. It is crucial, from the very beginning, to understand the vast difference between compassion and its distant, distorted cousin, pity. Pity stands above, looking down. It creates separation. When we feel pity, we are implicitly saying, "How terrible for you. I am so glad that I am not in your position." Pity reinforces the ego, creating a hierarchy of the sufferer and the non-sufferer. It is a cold and distant acknowledgement of pain. Compassion, karuna, does the very opposite. It closes the distance. It meets the other on the same level, as an equal. It is the ability to feel with another, not just feel for them. It comes from the profound recognition of our shared humanity. It says, "I see your pain. I may not know its exact story, but I know the feeling of pain itself. This is part of our shared human condition, and you are not alone in it." Pity builds a wall. Compassion opens a door. It is born not of judgment, but of connection. The root of all genuine compassion is the simple, visceral understanding that every living being, just like us, wants to be free from suffering. This isn't a complex intellectual theorem. It is a fundamental truth we can feel in our own bodies. We know the sting of harsh words, the ache of loss, the gnawing of anxiety. We instinctively move away from what hurts us and toward what brings us comfort. When we can see this same fundamental drive in another being, whether it is a person crying on a park bench or an animal caught in a trap, we have found the bridge to compassion. We recognize ourselves in them. Their struggle is no longer foreign. It is a reflection of a potential we all carry. This shared vulnerability, this common wish to be free from harm, is the fertile ground from which all karuna grows. Yet, before we can be a source of effective compassion for others, we must learn to turn that same quality of kindness toward our own pain. This is the practice of self-compassion, and it is not an indulgence, it is a necessity. Without it, our attempts to help others will be unstable, and we will be highly susceptible to burnout. Think for a moment about how you treat yourself when you are suffering. When you make a mistake, fail at a task, or feel overwhelmed by life, what is the tone of your inner voice? For many of us, that voice is a harsh and relentless critic, a judge who is never satisfied. It says, "You should have known better. You're not good enough. You failed again." This inner critic only adds a second layer of suffering, the suffering of judgment, on top of the original pain. Self-compassion is the radical act of learning to speak to ourselves as we would speak to a dear friend who is struggling. The practice can be very simple. The next time you feel a wave of pain, be it anxiety, sadness, or the sting of failure at this, pause, place a hand gently over your heart, a gesture of physical warmth and comfort. Acknowledge the reality of the moment by saying to yourself, "This is a moment of suffering." This is not self-pity, it is mindfulness, a clear seeing of what is present. Then, offer yourself the words you would offer a friend. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion that I need. May I accept myself just as I am. This practice is nothing short of revolutionary. It transforms our relationship with ourselves from one of adversarial conflict to one of unconditional friendship. It is from this stable, loving foundation within ourselves that we can then genuinely and sustainably extend compassion outwards. In the rich iconography of Mahayana Buddhism, there is a powerful embodiment of this active, boundless compassion, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. A bodhisattva is an enlightened being who makes the incredible vow to postpone their own final peace, choosing instead to remain in the world to help all beings find freedom from suffering. The legend tells that as Avalokiteshvara looked out upon the world, they saw the immense, unending, and overwhelming pain of countless beings. The sheer scale of it was so vast that their heart broke and their head shattered into 1,000 pieces. But from this compassionate shattering, they were reborn, transformed. They were given 1,000 hands to reach out and soothe the suffering of the world. And in the palm of each hand was an eye of wisdom, to see clearly and skillfully where help was most needed. This image is a profound teaching. It shows that compassion is not a passive sentiment. It is not just feeling sad about the state of the world. It is the dynamic, engaged, and wise readiness to act. It is the marriage of a tender heart that feels deeply and a clear mind that sees skillfully. It is the courage to let our hearts break open and the resolve to use the pieces to help heal the world. But how do we do this without being shattered ourselves? How can we keep our hearts open to so much pain without becoming completely overwhelmed, a state often called compassion fatigue? The wisdom traditions teach that compassion must always be balanced by its vital partner, upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is the spacious, calm, and steady mind that holds the trembling of the compassionate heart. It is the deep wisdom that understands that while we can offer our help, our care, and our love, we are not in control of the universe. We cannot fix every problem or eradicate all suffering. The compassionate doctor tends to their patient with the utmost care and skill, but they know that the ultimate outcome is not entirely in their hands. They do their best with a full heart, and then they let go of the result. This balance of a tender heart and a calm mind is what makes compassion sustainable. It prevents us from drowning in the sorrows of the world, and instead allows us to be a stable and helpful presence within it. We love, we care, we act, but we do not carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We can train this muscle of the heart through a formal meditation practice, settling into a quiet space. We first connect with our own sense of well-being. Then, we can bring to mind someone we know who is suffering. We allow ourselves to feel their pain, to connect with their struggle. Then we can begin a simple practice of compassionate breathing. On the in-breath, we can imagine breathing in their pain, their fear, their loneliness, not to hold on to it, but to transform it with the alchemy of our heart. On the out-breath, we can imagine sending them whatever would bring them relief, peace, strength, comfort, safety, and love. This is not a magical act that will instantly cure them. It is a profound inner training. It trains us to not turn away from suffering. It strengthens our courage, dissolves our fear of pain, and reinforces our deep intention to be of service. We are transforming ourselves into a vessel of compassion. In the end, karuna is the heart's natural response to life as it is. It is the acknowledgement that suffering is a part of this human journey, and that we have a choice in how we meet it. We can meet it with a closed fist of fear and aversion, or with the open hand of a compassionate heart. It is not about solving every problem, but about offering our presence, our kindness, our shared humanity. It is the courageous act of being willing to feel with others, and in doing so, to discover a connection that transcends all boundaries. But life is a complex tapestry, woven with threads of both sorrow and joy. Sometimes, the actions of others do not evoke our compassion, but instead, they ignite a fire within us. They cause us direct pain, and our immediate, instinctual response is not one of a tender opening, but of a defensive closing of the heart. This leads us to confront one of the most powerful, challenging, and misunderstood of all human emotions, the burning fire of anger. We have walked the path of the open heart, exploring the gentle wish for happiness in metta and the tender response to pain in karuna. But the human experience is not always so graceful. There are times when the actions of others do not call forth our compassion, but instead ignite a fire within us. When our trust is violated, our efforts are dismissed, or our safety is threatened, the heart's response is often not to open, but to contract into a tight, hot knot. A surge of raw energy courses through us. The vision narrows, the jaw clenches. This is the unmistakable presence of anger. In a world that often seems unjust and frustrating, anger can feel like a righteous, even necessary, response. But the wisdom of the path invites us to look closer, not at the person or situation that triggered the anger, but at the nature of anger itself, and at the one who truly suffers when it arises. The Buddha offered a powerful and unforgettable image for anger. He said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. Who gets burned first? The answer is obvious. We do. Long before our angry words or actions can reach their intended target, the poison of anger has already flooded our own system. Our blood pressure rises, our muscles tense, stress hormones flood our body. Our mind, which could be a place of peace, becomes a turbulent, agonizing, and obsessive hell. This simple and profound teaching shifts our entire motivation for working with anger. We no longer try to manage it because it is morally bad or unspiritual. We work with it for the most practical reason in the world, because we do not wish to suffer. We learn to put down the hot coal, not because we are saints, but because we have compassion for ourselves, and we no longer wish to be burned. The first step in this practice, as with all mental states, is not to fight, not to judge, and not to suppress. It is simply to recognize. It is the practice of mindfulness. When the wave of anger arises, can you meet it with awareness? Can you learn to observe it as a raw, impersonal energy in the body and mind, before it solidifies into a story of blame and righteousness? The invitation is to become a scientist of your own inner experience. Where exactly do you feel this anger? Is it a fire in your chest? A tightness in your throat? A pulsing in your temples? Simply noticing these raw physical sensations creates a crucial gap of awareness. In that gap, a space opens up between the feeling and your reaction to it. You begin to shift your inner language from the all-encompassing statement, "I am angry," to the more accurate and spacious observation, "There is a feeling of anger present in me." In that simple shift, everything changes. You are no longer the anger. You are the awareness that is noticing the anger. Anger is no longer the owner of the house. It is merely a powerful and temporary visitor. This practice is illuminated by one of the Buddha's most practical teachings, the parable of the two arrows. Imagine you are walking through a forest and you are struck by an arrow. This is painful. This first arrow represents the painful events of life that are largely outside of our control. Another person says something unkind. We lose a job. We get sick. These things happen, and they hurt. This is the first arrow. But what do most of us do next? We take out a second arrow, and we shoot ourselves. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the arrow of rumination, of outrage, of self-pity. It is the story we tell ourselves. How could they do that to me? This is terrible. My life is ruined. I'll never get over this. We replay the event. We stew in our resentment. We feed the original pain with our thoughts. Then we might even shoot a third arrow of shame for feeling so angry, and a fourth arrow of despair. The Buddha taught that while we may not always be able to avoid the first arrow of life, the entire spiritual path is about learning not to shoot ourselves with the second one. The first arrow causes pain. The second arrow causes suffering. The practice of mindfulness is what allows us to feel the sting of the first arrow without reaching for the second. Once mindfulness has created that vital space, We can use our intelligence to investigate the anger more deeply. Like a smoke alarm, anger is not the fire itself. It is a signal that something is burning. If we just try to shut off the alarm without finding the fire, we are missing the point. So we ask, with gentle curiosity, what is this anger trying to protect? What is burning underneath? Often, we find that anger is a secondary emotion, a protective shield covering up something more vulnerable. Perhaps, underneath the anger, there is deep hurt. Someone's words didn't just make us mad, they touched a place of old pain and insecurity. Or perhaps underneath the anger, there is fear. We feel threatened, and anger gives us a false sense of power and control. Or maybe, underneath the anger, there is simply a frustrated desire or an unmet expectation. We wanted reality to be one way, and it was another. Seeing this changes our relationship with the anger. We are no longer just a victim of an external event. We are a witness to our own inner world, our own vulnerabilities, our own attachments to how things should be. This insight is the beginning of wisdom. With this wisdom, we can then apply the specific antidotes to the poison of anger and its long, lingering shadow, resentment. The first antidote is patience. The simple, wise understanding that anger is an impermanent burst of energy. Like a storm, it may be intense, but it will pass if we do not add more fuel to it. We can learn to sit with the energy, to let it be there without acting on it, trusting in its impermanent nature. The most direct antidote, however, is the practice we have already explored, metta, or loving kindness. It may seem counterintuitive or even impossible to offer loving kindness to someone we are furious with. But remember the hot coal. This practice is for our benefit. It is the act of pouring cooling water onto the burning coal in our own hand. When you feel the heat of resentment, you can silently, for your own sake, wish that person well. And the wish can be a wise one. May you be free from the confusion and pain that causes you to act in this way. May you find true peace. This aspiration breaks the obsessive cycle of blame. It protects our own heart from being consumed by bitterness. It is not about forgiving their action. It is about freeing ourselves from the suffering of our reaction. Resentment is what happens when we refuse to put down the second arrow. We carry the story of our grievance with us, reopening the wound every single day. We drink the same small cup of poison each morning, hoping that the other person will somehow suffer from it. It is a terrible and futile bondage. The only path to freedom is to see this clearly and to choose, for our own sake, to let it go. This is the true meaning of forgiveness in a Buddhist context. It is not a moral transaction where we condone a harmful act. It is a profound act of self-compassion, where we declare, I am no longer willing to poison myself with this story. I am no longer willing to carry this burden. I choose my own peace over my attachment to being right. Anger, then, is one of the greatest teachers on the spiritual path. It shows us exactly where we are stuck, where we are clinging, where our hearts are still closed. It is a powerful energy that, when met with unconsciousness, creates immense suffering for ourselves and others. But when that same energy is met with the light of mindfulness and the coolness of compassion, it can be transformed. We learn to feel its heat without being burned. We learn to hear its message without getting lost in its story. We learn, moment by moment, to drop the second arrow. In this practice, we see that anger is a powerful pushing away of a painful feeling. But this is only one side of the coin of reactivity. What about the other side? The desperate pulling toward and grasping of pleasant feelings. This clinging to what we like, this attachment to people, things, and ideas, is just as deep a source of suffering as our aversion to what we dislike. Having looked directly into the fire of anger, we now turn our steady gaze to the beautiful, seductive, and equally perilous prison of the golden cage of attachment. We have looked directly into the consuming fire of anger, that powerful energy of pushing away, of aversion, of saying no to reality. It is a hot and painful state, and we can clearly see the suffering it causes. But there is another, more subtle, and often more seductive strategy of the mind that creates just as much, if not more, turmoil in our lives. It is the opposite of pushing away. It is the energy of pulling toward, of grasping, of clinging desperately to what we find pleasant. If anger is the hot coal we suffer from holding, attachment is the beautiful, glittering jewel that we clutch so tightly in our fist that our knuckles turn white and our arm aches from the strain. Both the pushing and the pulling are born from the same fundamental misunderstanding of life's nature, and both are deep and certain paths to suffering. This clinging to what we desire is the creation of a prison we mistake for a palace. It is the golden cage of attachment. In the teachings on the roots of suffering, we first encounter tanha, or craving. This is the initial thirst, the wanting mind that says, I like this, I want more, or I don't like this, I want it to go away. Attachment, or upadana, in the ancient language of the Buddha, is the next step in this chain of causation. It is what happens when craving takes hold. It is the active, sustained grasping and clinging that follows the initial desire. It's the evolution from, I want this, to, I must have this to be happy, and finally to, I have this, and I cannot bear the thought of losing it. It is this clinging, this desperate grip on the objects of our desire that lies at the heart of so much of our anxiety and dissatisfaction. It is vital to make a clear distinction between wholesome love and unwholesome attachment. This is a point of great confusion for many. The Buddhist path is not a path of cold, sterile indifference. It is a path of immense love and connection. But love and attachment are fundamentally different energies. Love is expansive and unconditional. It is a sincere wish for the well-being of another, independent of what they provide for us. Love says, I wish for you to be happy. Attachment, on the other hand, is contractive and conditional. It is rooted in our own need for security, pleasure, or identity. Attachment says, I need you to make me happy. Love is an open hand. Attachment is a clenched fist. Love frees, while attachment imprisons both the clinger and the one being clung to. We are masters of attachment, and we cling to a vast array of things, often without even realizing it. We cling to people, desperate for our partners, our children, or our friends to remain as they are, to always be there for us, to fulfill our emotional needs, forgetting that they too are impermanent, ever-changing rivers of experience with their own paths to walk. We cling to possessions, believing that our house, our car, our wealth, or our reputation provides us with a solid and lasting security. We fuse our sense of self with these external things, setting ourselves up for immense pain when they are inevitably lost, broken, or changed. Even more subtly, we cling to our views and opinions. We grasp our political beliefs, our religious doctrines, our ideas about how the world should be, as if they were a part of our very identity. When these views are challenged, we feel as if we ourselves are being personally attacked, and we react with defensiveness and anger. And perhaps the deepest attachment of all is the attachment to our own identity, to a fixed and static image of who we are. We cling to the idea that I am a successful person, or I am a healthy person, or I am a good person. And we suffer terribly when life presents us with evidence to the contrary. When we fail, when we get sick, when we act unskillfully, we are attached to a photograph of ourselves, while life itself is a constantly flowing movie. There is a brilliant and simple story that perfectly illustrates the mechanics of this self-inflicted prison. In some parts of the world, hunters have a clever way of trapping monkeys. They take a coconut or a hollow gourd and drill a hole in it, just large enough for a monkey to slide its open hand through. They place some sweet rice or a tempting nut inside the gourd and tie it securely to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along, smells the treat, and slips its hand inside. It grasps the prize, clenching its fist around the delicious food. But now, its fist is larger than the hole, and it cannot pull its hand out. It pulls, and shrieks, and struggles, but it is stuck. As the hunters approach, the monkey becomes even more frantic, pulling with all its might, but it will not let go of the bait. The profound and tragic truth of the story is that the monkey is not being held by the gourd or by the hunter. It is held only by its own clenched fist, by its own refusal to let go of the object of its desire. Its freedom is available in any instant. All it has to do is open its hand. And so it is with us. So much of our suffering, our feeling of being trapped by life, is simply the result of our own white-knuckled grip on something, a person, a possession, an identity, an expectation that we refuse to release. To learn the wisdom of letting go is not to become apathetic or to disengage from life. It is the exact opposite. It is the prerequisite for truly loving and appreciating the world in its fullness. When you are not constantly terrified of losing something, you are finally free to enjoy it for what it is, right now, in this moment. You can appreciate the beauty of a precious teacup without the background hum of anxiety that it might break. This is what the Zen master Ajahn Chah meant when he said of his favorite cup, "For me, this cup is already broken." By accepting its impermanence, he was free to enjoy it completely every day. You can love your partner with an open heart, celebrating them for who they are, rather than trying to control them or force them to fit your needs. Letting go is the difference between trying to capture a butterfly in a jar where it will quickly die, and sitting peacefully in a garden, allowing the butterfly to land on your open hand, appreciating its beauty freely before it flies away. We can cultivate this liberating skill, this muscle of letting go, in the small moments of our daily lives. This is our training ground. When your plans for the evening suddenly change, when the restaurant you wanted to go to is closed, can you notice your mind's attachment to how things should have been? Can you consciously release that grip and open to the reality of what is? That is the practice. In a conversation, when you feel the need to be right, to win the argument, can you state your view and then just let it go, allowing space for other perspectives without feeling threatened? That is the practice. When a small possession is lost or broken, can you watch your mind's reaction of frustration and see it simply as a moment of attachment, an opportunity to practice non-clinging? Life gives us countless opportunities every day to train this capacity, to unclench the fist of the mind. This attachment creates a cage for us. It may be a very beautiful cage, decorated with pleasant relationships, gilded with achievements, and furnished with comfortable routines. It feels safe, secure, and predictable, but it is a cage nonetheless. It limits our freedom, stifles our growth, and keeps us in a state of low-grade fear, the fear of loss, the fear of change, the fear of the vast, open, and uncertain sky of reality. The door of this golden cage is not locked from the outside by circumstance. The lock is our own clinging. To let go is to find the courage to open our own hand, to release our grip on the prize, and to step out into the liberating and sometimes frightening freedom of what is. We see that the pushing away of anger and the pulling toward of attachment are two sides of the same coin of clinging. The path to peace lies in relaxing this constant tensing of the mind, in allowing life to flow through us and around us without our needing to manipulate, control, or possess it. And this realization leads us to a most profound question. Who is it exactly that is doing all this clinging? This elaborate system of grasping and rejecting is all performed in the service of one central character in our inner drama. To truly uproot our attachments, we must turn the light of awareness onto this character itself. We must now investigate the powerful, persistent, and ultimately illusory shadow in the mirror, the nature of the ego. We have traced the roots of our suffering back from the fiery push of anger and the desperate pull of attachment, and we arrive at a fundamental question. Who is this I that is doing all this pushing and pulling? Who is this central character at the heart of our inner drama, whose comfort and validation seem to be the most important project in the world? This entity, this constructed self that feels so solid and real, is what we can call the ego. It is the narrator of our lives, the voice in our head that provides a running commentary of I, me, and mine. It is the collection of memories, beliefs, roles, and stories that we have bundled together and mistaken for our true identity. To finally understand the nature of our attachments and aversions, we must turn the light of awareness inward and investigate this powerful, persistent, and ultimately illusory shadow in the mirror. The ego operates on a few fundamental principles, and once you learn to recognize them, you will see them everywhere. The first principle is separation. The ego is the very mechanism that creates the sense of being a separate subject in a world of external objects. It draws a line in the sand and declares, I am in here, and the rest of the world is out there. This initial division is the foundation for all further conflict and alienation. Once it has established itself as separate, its second principle immediately kicks in: comparison. To define itself, the ego must constantly measure itself against everything and everyone else. Am I smarter or less smart? More attractive or less attractive? More successful? More righteous? More enlightened than them? This relentless habit of comparison is the direct source of the poisons of pride, jealousy, and envy. Pride arises when we feel superior, jealousy when we fear someone has what we want, and envy when we resent them for having it. It is a game in which we can never truly win, because there will always be someone who is, by some metric, better or worse. The third principle, born from the first two, is validation. Because the ego is not our true nature, because it is a mental construction, it is fundamentally insecure. On some deep, unconscious level, it knows it's a fraud. Therefore, it is engaged in a lifelong, desperate search for external validation to prove to itself that it is real and worthwhile. It craves praise like a drug and fears criticism like death. You can watch this mechanism in your own mind. Notice the little thrill you get when someone compliments you or likes your post on social media. That is the ego getting a temporary fix. Notice the sting you feel when someone disagrees with you or criticizes your work. That is the ego feeling its fragile existence being threatened. This need for validation is what drives our compulsion to win arguments, to tell stories in which we are the hero, and to constantly manage our image in the eyes of others. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates the nature of the egoic mind. A renowned scholar, famous for his deep knowledge of spiritual texts, traveled to visit an old Zen master to learn about the nature of Zen. Upon arriving, the scholar immediately began to display his vast learning, quoting scriptures and explaining complex philosophical concepts. The old master listened patiently, then quietly began to prepare tea. He placed a cup in front of the scholar and began to pour. He filled the cup to the brim, but then he didn't stop. The tea began to overflow, spilling onto the saucer and then onto the table. The scholar, alarmed, cried out, "Stop! The cup is full. No more will go in." The Zen master paused, looked at the scholar, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" That full cup is the ego. It is so filled with its own knowledge, its own stories, its own sense of identity, that there is no room for anything new, no space for genuine wisdom or direct experience to enter. The spiritual path is the process of learning to empty our cup. It is absolutely crucial to understand that the ego is not an enemy to be vanquished. To declare war on the ego is just more ego activity. It is the ego taking on a new, spiritual project. I will be the one who destroys my ego. This approach only strengthens the very structure we seek to understand. The ego is not evil. It is a necessary developmental tool, a kind of psychological scaffolding that helped us to function and navigate the world as we grew up. It gave us a sense of self that allowed us to relate to others and to organize our experience. The problem arises not because the ego exists, but because we mistake it for who we truly are. We mistake the scaffolding for the building itself. The path, therefore, is not one of destruction, but one of transcendence. It is not about killing the ego, but about outgrowing it, about learning to hold it more lightly, and about shifting our identification from this limited, constructed self to the vast, open awareness in which the ego appears. So how do we work with this structure skillfully? We begin by observing it without judgment. We simply watch the I, me, my show as it plays out in our minds. When the thought "I need to check my phone" arises, just notice it as a thought. When the feeling "my feelings are hurt" comes, just observe it as a feeling. By repeatedly and patiently noticing these egoic movements without getting swept away by them, we create space. We begin to see that these thoughts and feelings are not the totality of who we are. They are just events happening within us. From this place of observation, we can actively practice humility. The ego's fuel is pride and the need to be superior. Humility is the direct antidote. It is the cultivation of a beginner's mind, a mind that is open and curious. In any situation, instead of asking, "How can I assert my importance here?" we can ask, "What can I learn here?" This practice includes the willingness to say 3 of the hardest phrases for the ego to utter. I don't know, I was wrong, and I need help. Every time we choose humility over arrogance, we loosen the ego's grip. We can also shift our focus from the actor to the action. When you are meditating, instead of thinking "I am a good meditator," simply feel the sensation of the breath. When you perform an act of kindness, instead of patting yourself on the back for being a kind person, simply feel the warmth of connection in the act itself. By letting go of the need to build a story about the me who is doing things, the ego begins to naturally and quietly recede into the background. As we continue this practice of gentle observation, and intentional humility, something extraordinary begins to happen. In the moments when the ego's constant, noisy chatter subsides, we start to sense what lies beneath it. We touch into a quiet, calm, spacious presence that has been here all along, obscured by the clouds of our personality. This is the sky of our true nature, an awareness that is not dependent on external validation, because it is inherently whole. It is not defined by comparison, because it is connected to all things. It is naturally peaceful, clear, and compassionate. Our identity begins a slow and profound migration, shifting from the turbulent, constructed ego to this steady, luminous awareness. We realize we are not the shadow in the mirror. We are the mirror itself, the silent, loving presence that allows all shadows to appear and disappear without ever being stained by them. This journey of seeing through the ego inevitably brings us to its very core, to the raw fuel that powers its lifelong, frantic project of self-maintenance. For the ego to exist, it must constantly protect and defend itself, and this entire defensive strategy is powered by one deep, pervasive, and fundamental emotion. It is the fear of not being good enough, the fear of being wrong, the fear of being seen as the imposter. It suspects. It is. Ultimately, it is the fear of its own dissolution, its own death. To continue our work of disidentifying from this false self, we cannot bypass the engine room. We must be willing to turn our compassionate attention toward the very darkness the ego so desperately runs from. We must learn to befriend our fear. We have stood before the shadow in the mirror, recognizing the ego as the constructed, insecure self that drives so much of our clinging and aversion. And we have seen that the very fuel for this ego, the energy that powers its desperate, lifelong project of self-protection, is fear. This fear manifests in our lives as a pervasive, low-grade anxiety, a constant hum of worry about the future. It appears as sudden spikes of panic, as a paralyzing dread of the unknown, as the voice of the inner critic that tells us we are not safe, not good enough, not prepared. We spend so much of our precious life energy running from this darkness. We distract ourselves with entertainment. We numb ourselves with consumption. We keep busy to avoid the silence where our fears reside. The spiritual path, in its profound wisdom, invites us to do the most counterintuitive and courageous thing imaginable. It asks us to stop running, to turn around, slowly and gently, and face the trembling darkness within. It invites us to befriend our fear. A great deal of our anxiety comes from a simple, habitual error of the mind. We mistake our thoughts about the future for reality. The anxious mind is a time traveler, constantly leaping forward into imaginary scenarios of catastrophe. What if I lose my job? What if they reject me? What if I get sick and can't cope? We suffer deeply from events that have not happened and may never happen. We are tormented by ghosts of our own creation. The most direct and powerful antidote to this future tripping is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness gently, but firmly, escorts our awareness out of the imaginary future and back into the tangible reality of the present moment. It brings us home to the feeling of our breath moving in and out, the sensation of our feet firmly planted on the ground, the sounds in the room right now. In this present moment, stripped of our fearful stories, we almost always find that we are okay. The breath is still breathing, the heart is still beating, and this present moment is the only place from which we can ever take wise and effective action. Fear paralyzes us with what-ifs, but mindfulness grounds us in the power of what is. The archetypal story for this courageous meeting with fear is that of the Buddha's own struggle on the night of his enlightenment. As he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, resolved not to move until he had found the end of suffering, the Lord of Illusion, Mara, unleashed his armies. Mara represents the most powerful forces of the ego, and he could not allow the Buddha to escape his domain. First, he sent his army of desire, his beautiful daughters, to seduce the Buddha with promises of sensual pleasure. The Buddha remained unmoved, simply witnessing desire as desire. Then, Mara unleashed his army of fear, terrifying demons, monstrous creatures, and horrific visions swarmed around him, brandishing weapons and screaming threats. The Buddha did not fight back. He did not run. He did not even flinch. He simply remained seated, his awareness steady and unwavering, and met each terrifying vision with the simple recognition, "I see you." By acknowledging the fear without being consumed by it, he robbed it of its power. Finally, Mara, in a last-ditch effort, sent his army of doubt, whispering insidious questions. "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to seek enlightenment?" The Buddha didn't engage in a philosophical debate. He simply reached down and touched the earth, and the earth itself is said to have roared, testifying to his eons of practice and his right to be there. At that moment, Mara and all his armies vanished, like the morning mist. This story teaches us that the way to overcome our inner demons is not through violent battle, but through grounded, patient, and non-reactive awareness. This ancient wisdom can be distilled into a beautifully practical tool for working with fear and anxiety in our own lives, a practice known by the acronym RAIN. The R stands for recognize. When a wave of fear or anxiety arises, the first step is simply to mentally note it. This is fear. Anxiety is present. Naming the visitor at the door takes away much of its terrifying, amorphous power. The A stands for allow. This is the most radical and healing step. Instead of doing what we always do, resisting, fighting, or trying to distract ourselves, we give the feeling permission to be there. We stop arguing with reality. We allow the wave of fear to move through us, without needing it to be different. The I stands for investigate. With a spirit of gentle, non-judgmental curiosity, we explore the feeling. What does it actually feel like in the body? Is it a tightness in the chest, a cold knot in the stomach, a buzzing energy in the limbs? What thoughts and stories are attached to this feeling? We are not analyzing, but simply exploring with kindness. The N stands for nurture. After we have recognized, allowed, and investigated the fear, we offer kindness to the part of us that is frightened. This is an act of self-compassion. We might place a hand on our heart, feel its warmth, and offer ourselves soothing words, as we would to a scared child. It's okay to feel this way. I am here for you. This will pass. RAIN is a practice that transforms our relationship with fear from one of adversarial struggle to one of compassionate presence. When we can hold our fear in this way, it ceases to be just an enemy and can become a wise, if sometimes overzealous, teacher. Fear is a messenger. When it arises, instead of just shooting the messenger, we can learn to ask it, "What are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to protect?" The answer will almost always point directly to something we are attached to: our self-image, our sense of security, a relationship, our life. Fear shines a powerful spotlight on our deepest attachments. By seeing them so clearly, we are given the opportunity to loosen our grip, to hold them more lightly, and to find a freedom that is not dependent on external conditions being a certain way. Ultimately, all our smaller fears are branches of one great, deep root: the fear of death, the fear of our own annihilation. The Buddhist tradition offers a profound practice for working with this ultimate fear: Anapanasati, the mindfulness of death. This is not a morbid or depressing practice meant to make us miserable. It is the very opposite. It is a powerful practice for learning to live fully and fearlessly. By contemplating, on a regular basis, the simple truths that death is certain for everyone and that the time of our death is uncertain, two remarkable things happen. First, our everyday fears begin to shrink in significance. The fear of public speaking, of asking for a raise, of what others think of us. These anxieties seem trivial when placed against the backdrop of our own mortality. This perspective gives us immense courage to live more boldly. Second, an awareness of death infuses our life with an incredible sense of preciousness. Knowing that our time is finite, we are less likely to waste it on petty grievances and distractions. We are more motivated to forgive, to express our love, to appreciate the simple beauty of a sunset or a conversation with a friend. It is a profound wake-up call to live our deepest values right now, in this moment, because this moment is all we are ever guaranteed. Fear and anxiety, then, are not signs of weakness or failure. They are an inescapable part of the human condition, but they do not have to be our masters. By learning to turn toward them with mindfulness, to meet them with the courage of the Buddha, to hold them with the compassion of rain, and to learn from their wisdom, we can transform them from terrifying demons into trusted teachers. We discover a courage that does not come from the absence of fear, but from our willingness to walk alongside it. Having done the hard work of facing the darkness of our anger, our attachments, and our deepest fears, we clear a vast and fertile space within the garden of the mind. Now, with this newfound clarity and resilience, we are ready to learn how to cultivate the light, not just our own, but the radiant light we see in the good fortune of others. This leads us to the sublime and heart-opening practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy, the unselfish celebration of the happiness and success of all beings. Having journeyed with courage into the shadowed valleys of the mind, having learned to sit with the fire of anger and the trembling of fear, we have cleared the ground. We have pulled the thorny weeds of aversion and untangled the clinging vines of attachment. The soil of our heart, now tilled and softened by this difficult work, is ready for a new kind of cultivation. We are ready to intentionally plant and nurture the most beautiful flowers of the human spirit. We have already planted the seeds of metta, the gentle, unconditional wish for all beings to be happy. We have watered them with karuna, the compassionate tears that tremble in the face of suffering. Now, we turn our attention to a particularly radiant and sun-filled bloom, a quality known as mudita, or sympathetic joy. This is the heart's ability to feel genuine, unselfish happiness in the good fortune, success, and well-being of others. It is the sublime antidote to the poison of jealousy and envy. To understand the beauty of mudita, we must first look honestly at its opposite. Envy is one of the most painful and corrosive states of mind. It stems from a deep-seated belief in scarcity, a core tenet of the ego. The ego believes that happiness, success, recognition, and love are all finite resources, like slices of a single pie. If someone else gets a large slice, there is necessarily less for me. This scarcity mindset turns the world into a vast and threatening competition. When we hear of another's success, instead of feeling happy, our mind contracts. A bitter, cold feeling arises. We compare, we belittle, we find flaws, all in an attempt to protect our own fragile sense of self-worth. Envy is a profoundly isolating emotion. It builds walls between us and others, and it quietly poisons our own heart, preventing us from appreciating the goodness we already have. By looking squarely at the pain of this experience, at its tight, bitter, and lonely nature, we naturally generate the sincere motivation to cultivate its bright and spacious alternative. Mudita is the radical reversal of this scarcity mindset. It is born from the wisdom that happiness is not a limited commodity. It is an infinite, renewable resource. The joy of another person does not diminish our own. In fact, it offers us an opportunity to expand our own capacity for joy. The light from another's candle does not extinguish ours. It simply adds more light to the room, making it brighter for everyone. Mudita is the heart's joyful recognition of this abundance. It is the ability to celebrate the happiness of others as if it were our own, without any trace of self-interest. Like all wholesome qualities of the mind, mudita can be intentionally cultivated through practice. We start, as always, where it is easiest. Find a quiet and comfortable position and allow your mind to settle. Now, bring to mind a person you love deeply, someone whose happiness naturally makes you happy. This could be a dear friend, a child, a partner, or a beloved mentor. Now, imagine something truly wonderful happening for them. Picture them receiving the news they've been hoping for, achieving a lifelong dream, or simply experiencing a moment of pure, unadulterated delight. See the smile on their face, the light in their eyes. As you visualize their happiness, allow yourself to feel your own natural response. Let your heart open to their joy. Feel the warmth, the delight, the genuine happiness that arises within you for them. Linger with this feeling. This warmth, this selfless celebration is mudita. There is no simpler or purer example of this quality than the joy a loving parent feels for their child. When a parent watches their child succeed, their own heart swells with a pride and happiness that is completely unselfish. It is a joy felt for the other, a perfect illustration of mudita in its natural state. Once you have connected with this feeling, you can begin to stretch the muscle of your heart. Bring to mind a neutral person, perhaps a colleague or an acquaintance. Imagine hearing that they have had some good fortune promotion at work, a happy family event. Notice the mind's tendency to perhaps feel indifferent, but then gently shift your perspective. Recognize that this person, just like you, wishes to be happy. This moment of success is a moment of happiness for them. Can you consciously connect with that and offer them a simple, silent wish? How wonderful for you. May your happiness and success continue. You are training your mind to default to joy rather than indifference. The most transformative part of the practice is to then bring to mind someone whose success normally triggers your envy. This might be a rival, or simply someone whose life seems to highlight your own perceived shortcomings. Be honest with yourself. As you picture their success, notice if the familiar pang of jealousy arises. Don't judge it, just see it. Acknowledge it with mindfulness. Then, with great courage, see if you can change the channel of your mind. See that person not as a competitor, but simply as another being who is experiencing a moment of happiness. This is what they have wanted, just as you want happiness for yourself. Can you find it in your heart to offer them a sliver of goodwill? Even a whisper of, "I am happy that you are happy," is a revolutionary act. It is the act of pouring cooling water directly onto the hot coals of envy. It may not feel completely natural at first, but with repeated practice, you are fundamentally rewiring your response to the success of others, freeing yourself from a lifetime of painful comparison. The benefits of cultivating mudita are profound and life-altering. Firstly, it multiplies our own opportunities for joy 1,000-fold. If we can only be happy when good things happen to us, our chances for happiness are quite limited. But if we can learn to feel joy whenever good things happen to anyone, our potential for happiness becomes boundless. Every success story we hear, every smiling face we see, every happy couple we pass on the street becomes a source of joy for us. The world is no longer a landscape of competitors, but a vast field for harvesting happiness. Secondly, mudita is a powerful antidote to loneliness. Envy and comparison create walls and foster a sense of separation. Mudita dissolves these walls. It connects us to others in a spirit of shared celebration, making us feel part of a joyful human family. It enriches our relationships, as friends and family feel our genuine support and delight in their well-being. You can practice mudita in every moment of your daily life. When you scroll through social media and see announcements of weddings, new babies, or vacations, you can consciously choose to use these moments as practice, offering a silent, "How wonderful" for them, instead of feeling a pang of comparison. When a colleague shares good news, listen with your full attention and congratulate them with a sincerity that comes from the heart. When you experience a beautiful work of art or a moving piece of music, feel joy for the incredible talent of the person who created it. You are training your heart to seek out and celebrate the goodness and happiness that is all around you. Mudita, then, is the generous heart celebration of life. It is the joyful expression of our interconnectedness, the final and definitive rejection of the ego's bleak and impoverished scarcity mindset. With this practice, we have now explored 3 of the 4 sublime states of the heart, known as the Brahma Viharas, or divine abodes. We have cultivated metta, the loving wish for all beings to find happiness. We have opened to karuna, the compassionate trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. And we have practiced mudita, the selfless rejoicing in the happiness of others. These are vast, beautiful, and expansive qualities. But to live in this world is to experience a constant and chaotic mixture of all these conditions. One moment we are celebrating a friend's joy. The next, we are comforting another in their sorrow. How do we hold all of this, the joy and the pain, the success and the failure, without being constantly thrown off balance and swept away by the emotional currents? This requires the 4th and crowning quality of the awakened heart, the quality that provides the stable ground upon which all the others can stand. It leads us to the quiet, unshakable, and profound peace of upekkha, or equanimity. We have journeyed through the sublime landscapes of the open heart, cultivating the vast and beautiful states known as the divine abodes. We have practiced metta, the gentle rain of loving kindness, wishing for all beings to be happy. We have explored karuna, the tender trembling of compassion in the face of suffering. We have rejoiced with mudita, the selfless, sympathetic joy in the good fortune of others. To live with these qualities is to live with a heart that is radically open to the full spectrum of human experience. But this very openness can leave us feeling vulnerable. Life is a chaotic and unpredictable dance of joy and sorrow, gain and loss. One day, we are called to celebrate a wedding, the next to mourn at a funeral. How do we hold this immense joy and this profound sorrow without being constantly tossed about, our inner peace shattered by the relentless waves of circumstance? How do we keep our heart open without losing our center? The answer lies in the 4th and final divine abode, the quality that holds, balances, and protects all the others. This is the quiet, unshakable serenity of upekkha, or equanimity. It is essential to understand what equanimity is and what it is not. In the modern world, the word is often confused with indifference, apathy, or a kind of sterile, detached coldness. This is a profound misunderstanding. Upekkha is not a withdrawal from life. It is the condition for full and wise engagement with it. It is not about caring less. It is about caring with a boundless heart and a steady mind. True equanimity is born not of indifference, but of deep wisdom. It is the mind's spacious and loving ability to allow all experiences, pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, praise and blamito, arise and pass away without clinging to them or pushing them away. It is the calm, clear-seeing wisdom that allows our love, compassion, and joy to be offered skillfully and sustainably, without leading to burnout or despair. It is the perfect marriage of a warm heart and a cool head. A powerful image for equanimity is that of a great, ancient mountain. Picture this mountain standing through the changing seasons. The gentle sun of spring warms its slopes, and it receives the warmth. The fierce winds of autumn howl around its peaks, and it feels the winds. The heavy snows of winter blanket its face, and it bears the weight of the snow. Storms rage, lightning flashes, yet the mountain remains. It is not indifferent to the weather. The life upon it is nourished by the rain and sun, but its deep, rocky core is stable, grounded, and unmoved. Its fundamental being is not threatened by the transient phenomena playing out on its surface. A mind cultivated in equanimity develops this mountainous quality. It feels the heat of life's pleasures and the cold of its pains, but it is not fundamentally shaken. It has found a deep, inner stability that is not dependent on external conditions. This inner stability allows us to skillfully navigate what the Buddha called the 8 worldly winds. These are the 4 pairs of opposites that constantly blow through every human life, pushing and pulling an untrained mind. The first pair is gain and loss. We get the job, we lose our wallet. The second is praise and blame. Someone compliments us, someone criticizes us. The third is fame and disrepute. We have a good reputation, and then a rumor damages it. And the fourth is pleasure and pain, the constant stream of pleasant and unpleasant physical and mental sensations that make up our days. A mind without equanimity is like a weather vane, spinning erratically with every shift of these winds. It is inflated with pride when praised, and crushed with despair when blamed. It soars with happiness at a small gain, and plunges into misery at a small loss. Equanimity is the inner ballast that keeps the ship of our mind steady, no matter which way the winds are blowing. We still feel the winds, but they no longer have the power to capsize us. This inner balance is what allows for truly powerful and compassionate action in the world. Equanimity is not passivity. It frees us to act with immense love and courage because it liberates us from our attachment to the results. We help someone, not because we need their gratitude, but because they need help. We speak the truth not because we need others to agree with us, but because the truth needs to be spoken. A parent with equanimity can offer their child unconditional love and wise guidance without being shattered if the child makes different choices. This is the freedom of acting from a place of love rather than a place of need. It is what allows a social activist to fight tirelessly against injustice without being consumed by hatred or despair. They can act with the fierce energy of compassion, held within the spacious container of a balanced mind that understands it cannot control every outcome. We can cultivate this mountainous stability through practice. The most direct training ground is our own mindfulness meditation. As we sit, we simply pay attention to the stream of sensations in our body. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, and many are neutral. The untrained mind immediately reacts, trying to hold on to and prolong the pleasant feelings, while tensing up and trying to push away the unpleasant ones. The practice of equanimity is to simply watch this whole show with a balanced awareness. We note pleasant feeling and watch it arise and pass away without grasping. We note unpleasant feeling and watch it arise and pass away without resisting. We are training the mind moment by moment to break its lifelong habit of craving and aversion. We are learning to be with things as they are. We also cultivate equanimity by reflecting on the nature of reality itself, particularly the law of karma, or action. We come to understand that all beings are the owners of their own actions and the heirs of the results of those actions. We can love them, guide them, and help them, but ultimately, we cannot walk their path for them, nor can we shield them entirely from the consequences of their choices. This wisdom allows for a compassionate letting go. It helps us to avoid the savior complex and to offer help from a place of humility and respect for the autonomy of others. Equanimity is the serene eye of the hurricane. Life will always have its storms, its chaos, its unpredictable winds. We cannot stop the storm. The spiritual path is not about finding a way to make the winds cease. It is about discovering the place of profound stillness at the very center of the storm. This is the inner refuge of equanimity. From this calm center, we can witness the fury of the winds without being torn apart by them. We can feel the rain on our skin without drowning in it. Upekkha is the great protector of the heart. It is the wisdom that brings balance to our love, compassion, and joy, making them sustainable and boundless. It is the quiet strength that allows us to face the totality of life in all its beauty and its terror, with a heart that is both radically open and unshakably serene. With our minds and hearts stabilized by these four divine abodes, we are no longer merely reacting to the world from a place of egoic fear and desire. We are now capable of responding to it with clarity, courage, and grace. But how does this profound inner transformation translate into our outward behavior in the world? A balanced mind naturally gives rise to a balanced and ethical life. This is where we turn from the inner cultivation of the heart to the practical, embodied expression of this wisdom, starting with the very foundation of the path, sila, or ethical conduct, as manifested in our daily speech, our actions, and the way we make our living. Having cultivated the four sublime states of the heart-loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, we arrive at a place of profound inner balance. We have developed a heart that is both radically open to the world and unshakably serene in its presence. This inner transformation, however, is not an end in itself. The spiritual path is not a retreat from the world, but a training for how to engage with it wisely and gracefully. The question naturally arises, how does this inner state of balance translate into our outward actions? How do we embody this clarity and compassion in our day-to-day lives? This is where we turn to the foundational framework of the entire path, the indispensable ground upon which all progress is built. This is the domain of sila, or ethical conduct, as expressed through our speech, our actions, and the very way we choose to make our living. Before exploring the components of sila, it is vital to understand its purpose. In many belief systems, ethics are framed as a set of divine commandments to be obeyed in order to earn a reward or avoid punishment from an external authority. The Buddhist understanding of ethics is profoundly different. It is entirely practical and psychological. The purpose of ethical conduct is not to please a god, but to create a mind that is peaceful, calm, and free from the agitation of regret. Think of your mind as a pool of water. When you act in ways that cause harm, when you lie, or steal, or speak cruelly, it is like throwing handfuls of gravel into the pool. The water becomes turbulent, agitated, and muddy. In such a state, it is impossible to see your own reflection clearly, impossible to see to the bottom. Unethical actions invariably create stress, guilt, fear, and anxiety. A mind clouded by these states cannot possibly settle into the deep states of concentration required for meditation. Sila, therefore, is the gentle and intentional practice of refraining from throwing gravel into the pool. It is the commitment to non-harming that allows the mud to settle, the water to become clear, and the mind to become a suitable instrument for insight. The first pillar of this ethical life is right speech. Our words have immense power. They can build up or tear down, heal or wound, create harmony or sow division. Right speech is the practice of wielding this power with mindfulness and compassion. It consists of 4 beautiful guidelines. First, we commit to abstaining from false speech. This is more than just not telling lies. It is a deep commitment to speaking what is true and useful, building a foundation of self-respect and earning the trust of others. Second, we abstain from slanderous speech, from using our words to drive wedges between people. Instead, we use our speech to protect harmony, to encourage reconciliation, and to speak of the good qualities of others. Third, we abstain from harsh speech. We let go of the use of anger, insults, sarcasm, and cruelty in our communication. We learn to speak with a kindness and gentleness that respects the dignity of the person we are speaking to, even when we must convey something difficult. Finally, and perhaps most subtly, we abstain from idle chatter. We begin to notice how much of our daily speech is meaningless gossip, speculation, and distraction that serves only to dissipate our mental energy and clutter the minds of ourselves and others. Right speech is purposeful. Before we speak, we can learn to ask ourselves, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is this the right time? The second pillar is right action, which is the practice of embodying the principle of non-harming in our physical behaviors. This is traditionally guided by the 5 precepts, which are not rigid commandments, but rather profound and compassionate vows we undertake for our own well-being and the well-being of all. The first is to abstain from taking life, a practice of cultivating a deep reverence and respect for all living beings. The second is to abstain from taking what is not given, a commitment to honesty, integrity, and the practice of generosity. The third is to abstain from sexual misconduct, which means engaging in our intimate relationships with honesty, mutual respect, and care, ensuring that we do not cause harm or exploit the vulnerability of ourselves or others. The fourth precept is to abstain from false speech, which we have already covered. And the fifth is to abstain from intoxicants that cloud the mind and lead to heedlessness. This precept is a protector of all the others. When our mind is clouded by drugs or alcohol, our mindfulness is weakened, and we are far more likely to break the other precepts. The aim is to protect the clarity of our awareness. The third pillar, right livelihood, extends this ethical framework into the area where we spend the majority of our waking hours, our work. It is the recognition that our profession should not be a source of harm to ourselves or to other beings. The Buddha specifically advised against earning a living through trade in weapons, trade in living beings, such as slavery or animal slaughter, the production of meat on a large scale, and trade in poisons and intoxicants. In our modern context, this principle invites us to reflect deeply on the impact of our work. Does my job contribute to the well-being of society, or does it cause harm to people, animals, or the environment? Can I find a way to use my unique talents and skills in a profession that aligns with my deepest values, a profession that feels wholesome and constructive. Imagine a merchant in a small town who decides to base his business entirely on these principles of Sila. He deals only in quality goods, uses honest weights and measures, and charges a fair price. He treats his employees with respect and pays them a living wage. He refuses to sell products that he knows are harmful. Some of his competitors, who cheat their customers and exploit their workers, might make more money in the short term, but they live in a state of constant anxiety, fearing exposure and harboring a deep sense of inner conflict. The ethical merchant, however, builds a reputation for integrity and fairness. His business flourishes, built on a foundation of trust and goodwill from the community. More importantly, he goes home each evening and puts his head on his pillow with a clear conscience. His mind is not agitated by guilt, not stressed by deception. This profound inner peace, this freedom from remorse, is his greatest wealth. It is the fertile ground from which all other spiritual qualities can grow. Sila, then right speech, right action, and right livelihoods, the indispensable foundation of the entire spiritual path. It is the way we bring the beauty of our inner practice out into the world. Living an ethical life is not a restriction on our freedom. It is the very path to true freedom. Freedom from guilt, freedom from remorse, freedom from the agitation of an unskillful mind. This calm, stable, and dignified way of living creates the perfect conditions for the next stage of the path, the deepening of concentration, or samadhi. And it is from a mind that is both harmonized by ethical conduct and sharpened by meditative focus that the final, liberating flower of the path can finally bloom. We now turn our attention to this culmination, the direct and profound unfolding of Panna, or wisdom itself. We have now walked a long way on this journey inward. We began by establishing Sila, or ethical conduct, creating a life of harmlessness that allows the mind to become calm and free from regret. This calm and settled mind, like a tranquil pool of water, becomes the perfect ground for cultivating samadhi, or meditative concentration, a mind that is steady, clear, and focused. We can think of this process like the building of a great observatory. Sila is the solid, unshakable foundation, ensuring that the structure is stable. Samadhi is the powerful, finely crafted telescope, capable of being pointed with precision and held without trembling. But a foundation and a telescope, as wonderful as they are not the goal. The entire purpose of the observatory is to see something. It is to look through the lens and witness the universe as it truly is. This seeing, this direct and liberating knowing, is Panna, or wisdom. It is the culmination of the path, the very reason for the journey. It is the clear light of insight that dispels the darkness of ignorance and sets us free. It is vital to understand that Panna is not the same as intellectual knowledge. Our modern world lionizes information. We can accumulate facts, read countless books, learn different languages, and earn advanced degrees. We can become a scholar of Buddhism, able to recite ancient texts and debate complex philosophical points, and yet not possess a single drop of true Panna. Knowledge is the accumulation of concepts, the description on the menu. Wisdom is the direct, experiential tasting of reality itself. It is a seeing so profound that it transforms us at the core of our being. The practices of Sila and Samadhi are not arbitrary rules or mental gymnastics. They are the precise and necessary methods for cleansing the palate and sharpening the senses so that we can finally taste the food, so that we can experience life directly, without the distorting filters of our fear, craving, and confusion. This liberating wisdom is comprised of two final factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. The first, and most important, is right view. If the path is a journey, right view is the correct map. To set out on a journey without a map is to wander aimlessly, likely getting more lost than when you began. Right view is the framework of understanding that orients us toward freedom. It is the lens of clarity that allows us to see things not as we wish they were or as we fear they might be, but as they actually are. What does this map of right view show us? It shows us the fundamental landscape of our existence. It illuminates the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha's core diagnosis of the human condition, the reality of our subtle and pervasive dissatisfaction, its cause in our clinging and craving, the possibility of its cessation, and the path that leads to that freedom. It reveals the universal truth of Anicca, or impermanence, the direct seeing that everything in our experience, from our thoughts and emotions to our bodies and the world around us, is in a constant state of flux. It shows us the reality of anatta, or non-self, the profound insight that there is no fixed, solid, independent I at the center of this flux, but rather an interdependent process of changing physical and mental phenomena. And it reveals the law of karma, the natural principle of cause and effect, showing us that our intentional actions are the primary force shaping our destiny. Right view is not about blindly believing these principles. It is about taking them on as a working hypothesis, as a reliable map, and then using our practice to verify them for ourselves, turning belief into direct, lived experience. If right view is the map, the second aspect of wisdom, right intention, is the compass. A map is useless if we are not consistently oriented in the right direction. Right intention, sometimes translated as right thought or right resolve, is the practice of consciously aligning the energy of our mind with the goal of liberation. It is about actively steering our thoughts away from the shores of suffering and toward the open ocean of peace. This practice has three facets. First is the intention of renunciation. This does not necessarily mean giving up all our worldly possessions. It means the inner renunciation of our obsessive clinging, the letting go of our desperate attachment to pleasure and our frantic aversion to pain. It is the intention to find happiness not in getting what we want, but in wanting what we have. Second is the intention of loving kindness. This is the conscious resolve to abandon thoughts of ill will, anger, and resentment, and to actively cultivate thoughts of goodwill, friendliness, and benevolence toward all beings without exception. Third is the intention of harmlessness, or compassion. This is the firm intention to let go of all thoughts of cruelty and to actively cultivate a heart that wishes for all beings to be free from suffering. These three intentions of letting go, of kindness, of compassion, become the rudder that guides our mind, ensuring that our journey is always headed in the direction of freedom. We can imagine a person lost in a vast, dark forest at night. Their practice of samadhi, their concentration, is like a bright, powerful flashlight. It illuminates the ground directly in front of them with brilliant clarity, so they can avoid tripping on roots or falling into holes. This is incredibly useful and necessary. But the flashlight alone will not get them out of the forest. They also need panna, wisdom, their map, which shows the layout of the entire forest and the path that leads out, is right view. Their compass, which they consult constantly to make sure they are still heading north toward the forest's edge, is right intention. To escape the forest of suffering, we need both the focused beam of the flashlight and the unerring guidance of the map and compass. This highlights the beautiful, synergistic nature of the path. It is not a linear set of steps where you perfect one and then move to the next. It is an upward spiral where each factor supports and deepens the others. We begin by practicing sila, ethical conduct, which calms the mind and frees it from remorse. This calm mind, in turn, provides the stable platform upon which we can develop samadhi, deep concentration. This sharp, steady, concentrated mind becomes the powerful instrument that can see into the true nature of reality, giving rise to panna, or wisdom. But the journey doesn't end there. As wisdom dawns, we see with ever greater clarity the suffering caused by unskillful actions, which deepens and reinforces our commitment to sila. This more refined ethical conduct leads to an even calmer mind, which allows for even deeper samadhi, which produces even more profound panna, and so the spiral continues, each turn taking us higher, closer to the complete freedom of a fully awakened heart and mind. Wisdom, then, is the ultimate fruit of this entire journey. It is the clear seeing that cuts through the tangled thickets of ignorance. Right view gives us the correct perspective, and right intention aligns our heart with that perspective. This wisdom is not an abstract philosophy, but a living, breathing perception of reality as a dynamic, interconnected, and selfless process. A cornerstone of this liberating view, a central feature on the map of reality, is the profound understanding of cause and effect. To deepen our wisdom, we must now look more closely at this crucial principle, to explore one of the most powerful and frequently misunderstood concepts in spiritual thought, the law of karma. We must learn to see it, not as a fatalistic system of cosmic judgment, but as the natural law of action and consequence that places the power to create our future firmly and directly into our own hands. As we stand within the clear, illuminating light of panna, or wisdom, we begin to perceive the world not as a series of random, disconnected events, but as a vast, intricate, and seamless web of cause and effect. A central thread in this web, a principle that is foundational to right view, is the universal law of karma. There are few concepts from the spiritual East as widely known in the West as karma, and yet there are few that are as profoundly misunderstood. It is often imagined as a kind of cosmic bookkeeping, a system of divine reward and punishment, or worse, as a rigid, fatalistic destiny that has already been written for us. These interpretations, however, miss the brilliant, liberating heart of the teaching. The Buddha's understanding of karma is not a doctrine of fear or resignation. It is one of the most empowering, hopeful, and radical principles ever taught, for it places the entire power to shape our destiny squarely in our own hands. To begin, we must strip the word of its mystical baggage. The word karma in the ancient Pali language literally means action. It does not mean result. It does not mean fate. It simply means action. But it is not just any action. The Buddha was very precise about this. He said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma. For having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This is the revolutionary core of the teaching. The moral and spiritual weight of an action lies not in the physical movement itself, but in the intention, the cetana, that animates it. A physical action can be almost identical, but a different intention will create an entirely different karmic seed. If you are driving and a deer runs onto the road, and you swerve accidentally, causing another car to crash, it is a tragic accident. If, however, you see another driver who has angered you, and you intentionally swerve to run them off the road, it is a malicious and deeply unwholesome act. The physical action of swerving is similar, but the intention is worlds apart. The first event creates shock and sadness. The second plants a dark and painful seed of hatred in the mind, a seed that will inevitably bear a bitter fruit. Karma is not a system of justice meted out by an external being. It is a natural law, as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. If you plant an apple seed, you will get an apple tree, not a thorny bush. If you plant a seed from a toxic weed, you will get a toxic weed, not a fragrant flower. The soil does not judge the seed. It simply provides the conditions for it to grow according to its nature. In the same way, the universe does not judge our actions. The law of karma is simply the principle that wholesome intentions and actions naturally lead to wholesome and happy results, while unwholesome intentions and actions naturally lead to unwholesome and painful results. Actions rooted in generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom are like healthy seeds that will, in time, ripen into a harvest of peace, connection, and well-being. Actions rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion are like poisoned seeds that will ripen into a harvest of anxiety, conflict, and suffering. The most helpful way to understand this is to see yourself as a gardener and your mind as the garden. Every single day, with every intentional thought, word, and deed, you are planting seeds in this garden. When you choose to speak a kind word instead of a harsh one, you are planting the seed of a flower. When you choose to act with generosity instead of selfishness, you are planting the seed of a fruit tree. When you choose to meet a difficult situation with patience instead of anger, you are planting the seed of a great, strong oak. Conversely, when you indulge in angry thoughts, speak with malice, or act out of greed, you are scattering the seeds of thorny weeds and poison ivy. The state of your garden right now, the mixture of flowers, fruits, and weeds that you find there is the result of all the seeds you have planted in the past. This is the karmic fruit you are currently experiencing. But you are not a helpless victim of your garden's current state. You are the gardener. And the most important truth is that in this very moment, you are holding a fresh packet of seeds. Right now, you have the choice. Will you plant a flower or will you plant a weed? The future beauty and health of your garden depends entirely on the choices you make today. This reveals the profound power of the present moment. The present is the magical intersection where the past meets the future. We are experiencing the results of our past actions while simultaneously planting the seeds for our future results. We cannot go back and unplant the weeds of yesterday, but we can, right now, stop scattering new weed seeds and begin, with great diligence and care, to cultivate the flowers of kindness, generosity, and wisdom. This understanding liberates us from the prison of regret about the past and from a sense of helpless anxiety about the future. It calls us to a radical sense of personal responsibility. You are not defined by your past. You are defined by the choices you make in this moment. The power to create a more peaceful, compassionate, and joyful future for yourself and for the world does not lie in some distant heaven or in a lucky break. It lies in the quality of your very next thought, your very next word, your very next action. Of course, the workings of karma are incredibly complex. Not every single thing that happens to us is a result of our individual past actions. The world is a complex web of intersecting causes and conditions, including physical laws, biological processes, weather patterns, and social and economic structures. The ripening of karmic seeds is also not always immediate. Some seeds sprout quickly, some lie dormant for years. The purpose of understanding karma is not to become a karmic accountant, trying to trace every event back to a specific past action. This is an impossible and fruitless task. The purpose is to focus on the only thing we can ever truly control, the intention behind our actions in the present moment. If we take care of our intentions right now, we can trust that our future, our harvest, will take care of itself. Understanding karma, then, is not about accepting a predetermined fate. It is about waking up to our creative power. It is the final rejection of the victim mindset. We are the architects of our own lives. We are the gardeners of our own minds. Every day, every moment, we are shaping our world. This is not an abstract philosophy to be debated. It is a direct and urgent call to action. It transforms the spiritual path from a passive process of waiting for enlightenment to an active process of cultivating it with every breath. And so, with this empowering realization, and with all the profound tools and insights we have gathered on this long journey, we arrive at the final, most practical question. How do we put all of this together? How do we walk this path, not just in the quiet of meditation, but in the midst of our demanding jobs, our complex relationships, and our busy, noisy, modern lives? This leads us to the crucial art of integration and the establishment of a sustainable daily practice. We have traveled an immense distance on this inner journey together. We have explored the deep nature of our modern anxieties, confronted the reality of suffering, and uncovered its roots in our own minds. We have cultivated the boundless heart of compassion, faced the fire of our anger and the darkness of our fear, and learned the wisdom of letting go. Finally, we have arrived at the empowering understanding of karma, the recognition that we are the gardeners of our own minds, the architects of our own lives. After such a profound exploration, one crucial question remains, a question that brings this entire journey from the philosophical realm into the very center of our lived experience. How do we actually do this? How do we walk this path? Not in a monastery or on a silent retreat, but in the midst of our demanding jobs, our complex family lives, our digital distractions, and the relentless pace of the 21st century. This is the final and most vital piece of the puzzle, the art of integration, the weaving of this timeless wisdom into the very fabric of our daily lives. The first and most important piece of advice is to start small. The modern mind often falls into the trap of all or nothing thinking. We believe we must immediately start meditating for an hour a day, or the entire effort is a failure. This approach is a recipe for discouragement. The key to building a sustainable practice is not duration, but consistency. A heartfelt, focused 5-minute meditation session practiced every single day is infinitely more powerful and transformative than a heroic 1-hour sit attempted once a month. That daily 5 minutes becomes an anchor. It is a quiet declaration to yourself that your inner peace matters. It creates a small still point in the hurricane of your day, and over time, the strength and stability of that still point will grow. So do not wait for the perfect, quiet hour that may never come. Begin today. When you wake up, before you reach for your phone, simply sit for 5 minutes. Feel your body sitting. Feel your breath breathing. That is enough. That is the beginning of everything. The second principle is to understand that formal meditation is only one part of the practice. The ultimate goal is to bring mindfulness off the cushion and into every corner of our lives. This is the practice of meditation in action. Your life, exactly as it is, becomes your monastery. When you are washing the dishes, don't think about the emails you have to answer. Just wash the dishes. Feel the sensation of the warm water on your hands. See the iridescent soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the plates. As the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught, you can be just as present and awake, washing the dishes as you are sitting on a meditation cushion. When you are eating, take the first 3 bites of your meal in silence. Truly taste the food. Notice its colors, its textures, its flavors. This transforms the simple act of eating from mindless consumption into a moment of nourishment and gratitude. When you are listening to a friend or a partner, truly listen. Put your phone away. Let go of formulating your response and offer them the rare and precious gift of your full, undivided attention. Every mundane activity, walking to your car, waiting in line, brushing your teeth, becomes an opportunity to come back home to the present moment. To support this integration, it can be immensely helpful to create a small sacred space in your home. This does not need to be an elaborate altar. It can be a simple corner of a room, perhaps with a cushion on the floor, a single candle, a flower, or a stone that has meaning to you. This space acts as a physical reminder, a visual cue to your mind and heart of your intention to practice. Simply glancing at this quiet corner as you go about your day can be a micro moment of mindfulness, a silent invitation to pause, take a conscious breath, and reconnect with your inner stillness. And while this path is an intensely personal and inward journey, we do not have to walk it alone. In Buddhism, there is a deep appreciation for Sangha, the community of fellow practitioners. In our modern world, Sangha can take many forms. It might be a local meditation group, an online course, or simply a friend with whom you can share the triumphs and challenges of your practice. Connecting with a Sangha provides encouragement, inspiration, and a healthy sense of perspective. It reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles or our aspirations. Sharing this journey with others normalizes the experience and makes it feel more integrated into our social world, less like a secret, isolated hobby. To illustrate how all these small efforts come together, imagine the process of building a beautiful house out of bricks. If you look at a single brick, it seems small and insignificant. What can you possibly build with just one brick? The act of laying that single brick can feel like slow, unrewarding work. But the person who shows up every day and with patience and care lays one brick and then another and then another is engaged in a powerful act of creation. Over time, those thousands of individual bricks, each one seemingly unimportant on its own, come together to create a magnificent and enduring shelter, a home that is strong, beautiful, and able to withstand any storm. Each 5-minute meditation, each mindful breath while waiting in traffic, each kind word offered when anger was the easier choice, each moment of letting go are the bricks of your practice. Individually, they may seem small, but laid consistently, day after day, they are building an inner refuge of profound peace, strength, and wisdom within you. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we must bring a boundless sense of patience and self-compassion to this process. This path is not a linear ascent to perfection. It is a human journey with hills, valleys, and winding turns. There will be days when your mind feels clear and your heart feels open. There will be other days when you feel lost in a fog of distraction, falling back into old, painful, reactive habits. This is not failure. It is simply the nature of the path. The crucial ingredient is how you treat yourself when you stumble. Can you meet your own perceived failures, not with harsh judgment, but with the same gentle kindness you would offer a dear friend? Can you acknowledge the slip, learn what you can from it, and then, without drama or self-recrimination, simply begin again? The goal is not to arrive at a final destination called enlightenment. The path is the practice, the compassionate walking itself, with all its stumbles and its fresh starts, is the entire point. With this understanding, this great and ancient path becomes not another source of pressure in our already pressured lives, but a source of profound relief. It is not one more thing to achieve, but a way of being that we can practice in any moment. We have explored the diagnosis, we have understood the cause, and we have been given the prescription. We now have the tools, the understanding, and the power to walk toward freedom. The journey home begins now, with your very next breath. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey together, a journey that has taken us from the frantic noise of the modern world into the quiet, boundless landscape of the heart and mind. We began in a familiar place, sitting in the half-light of a screen, feeling the subtle ache of being overwhelmed, disconnected, and adrift. We gave a name to this feeling, a name both ancient and immediate: Dukkha, the pervasive sense of unsatisfactoriness that hums beneath the surface of our lives. From that honest starting point, we began to walk a path of discovery. We uncovered the root of this dis-ease, not in the world outside, but in the inner world of the mind, in the relentless thirst of tanha, the craving and clinging that keeps us forever seeking and never finding. Yet, in that diagnosis, we found not despair, but a profound message of hope, nirodha, the truth that this suffering has a cause, and therefore, it can have an end. We saw that freedom was possible, and we were given a map for the journey home, the comprehensive and compassionate guide of the Noble Eightfold Path. Together, we have learned to anchor ourselves in the simple, life-giving rhythm of the breath. We have learned to watch our thoughts and feelings not as absolute truths, but as passing clouds in the vast sky of awareness. We have found the courage to turn toward our most difficult emotions, to sit with the fire of anger and the trembling of fear, transforming them from terrifying masters into wise teachers. We have opened our hearts, cultivating the boundless states of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and the unshakable peace of equanimity. We have seen that we are the gardeners of our own karma, with the power to shape our future in every present moment. If there is one single message to carry with you from our time together, let it be this: peace is not what you think it is. It is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not a permanent vacation from the challenges of life, a quiet cabin in the woods free from all trouble. True, deep, and lasting peace is an inner capacity. It is a quality of your own mind and heart that can be cultivated and nurtured right here, right now, in the midst of your actual life. It is the discovery of the eye of the hurricane. It is the unwavering stillness that can hold the chaos of the world without being broken by it. Peace is not the absence of the storm. Peace is the stillness within the storm, and you have everything you need to find it. You do not need to acquire anything new or become someone different. The tools for this journey are already in your possession. Your breath is your most faithful anchor, always with you, always ready to bring you home to the present moment. Your innate capacity for kindness is your most reliable compass, always able to point you toward connection and away from isolation. And your own awareness, the simple, luminous knowing that is reading these words right now, is the only light you will ever need to illuminate any darkness. This path is not about striving to become a better person. It is a journey of unbecoming. It is the gentle, patient, letting go of all the layers of fear, conditioning, and false identity that obscure the radiant, peaceful, and compassionate nature that has been your birthright all along. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and the journey home to the peace within you begins with a single, conscious breath. Let it be this one.